Good evening and welcome to the Board of Education meeting of June 15th, 2023. We'll begin this evening's meeting with first our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the traditional, ancestral, and ceded territory of the Chumash, Tongva, Fernandino, Tataviam, and First Nations on which we are learning, educating, and living. With that, I will ask that Dr. Roberta Reynolds come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me in honoring our country and all of the men and women who have served our country.
Stand up, please.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag for the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you to our former board colleague, former board president, Dr. Roberta Reynolds, for opening us with the Pledge of Allegiance. With that, Ms. Quiterio, can you please take the roll call at this time?
Member Tabbitt.
Present.
Member Poncer Kamkar.
Present.
Clerk Agakanian.
Present.
Vice President Weisberg.
Present.
President Ferguson.
Present. We do have all 5 board members present, so we do have enough board members, that would be 3, to proceed with the business of the meeting. And so we will move on to item number 5, reporting on closed session. The following action was taken on item 3A, which was on the motion of member Poncer Kamkar and seconded by member Tabbitt. Based on the board's review in closed session of the recommendation submitted by the District Transfer Review Committee, the board accepts the recommendation to readmit student number 960033703 based on the completion of the rehabilitation plan per expulsion hearing panel. And that passed unanimously 5-0. On to item 3C. Just making sure that's all. Nope, 3B. Yes. Wait. Hold on. Oh, no, you're right, 3C. Okay, on to item, 3C, reporting out on item 3C. The Board of Education met, and these are the following reporting out items for for item 3C. The Board of Education met in closed session and voted to approve the acceptance of written determination and decision regarding employee number CL0047-23. The motion was made by Dr. Agakanian, seconded by myself, and passed unanimously. The Board of Education also met in closed session and voted to approve the notice of intent to dismiss and a statement of charges regarding employee number CT0136-22. The motion was made by Dr. Weisberg, seconded by Dr. Agakanian, and carried unanimously. And then the Board of Education met in closed session and voted to approve the notice of intent to dismiss and the statement of charges regarding employee number CL0042-23. That motion was made by Ms. Tabbitt and seconded by Ms. Poncer Kamkar, and carried unanimously. Apologies, there was a lot in closed session. On item 3B, the motion was made. We did adopt the settlement agreement for item 3B. The motion was made by Ms. Poncer Kamkar. It was seconded by Dr. Weisberg, and that vote carried unanimously. And lastly, jumping back to item 3C. Tonight in closed session, the board took action to terminate Superintendent Hill's contract without cause pursuant to Section 18E of the contract effective June 30th, 2023, in accordance with a separation agreement with Dr. Hill. Under the separation agreement, he will receive the equivalent of 12 months base salary within 60 days of the effective date of the separation agreement and will be entitled to continued health benefits for 12 months. Dr. Hill will be departing the Burbank Unified School District on June 30th, 2023. The district wishes Dr. Hill well regarding his future endeavors and thanks him for his service and accomplishments on behalf of the district during his tenure. The board will have no further comment on this confidential personnel matter. Dr. Hill's departure provides an opportunity for change. As a result, the board will pursue a thoughtful, transparent, and inclusive process to select a new superintendent for the district. As we pursue that process, we are fortunate to have Dr. Paramo to serve as our acting superintendent. The board also took action in closed session tonight to formally appoint him as acting superintendent, and the vote of each member was a unanimous vote. Dr. Paramo is a lifelong educator with a heart for students and equity. He is passionate about delivering for kids and will be a very effective acting superintendent as we go through this process and in this time. The board is grateful that he has agreed to lead us in this moment, and we all believe that he is the right person for this job. I also want to thank our cabinet, who also is taking on a great deal during this transition, and thank all of our employees who are going to be impacted in one way or another. But we thank everybody, and with that, I believe that is the last thing to report out on closed session. With that, we will go to item 6, adjustments to the agenda. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? Seeing none. We'll go to item 7, items for future agendas. Dr. Weisberg.
Board President Ferguson, I would like to put back onto the agenda discussion about the exploration of Horace Mann as a site for teacher housing. There's an enormous amount of misinformation.
Okay.
Enormous amount of misinformation being floated, and I think it's important that we dedicate a little bit more time to clarifying so that the incorrect information doesn't take center stage for future. Yeah, next.
Can I suggest that as a study session so that way it can be a conversation back
Yeah.
and forth, as opposed to a 5-minute period where then you come down, fill out a card, and then
Yeah.
It's one-sided.
Absolutely.
Would that be okay? Okay, without objection, we'll add that to the queue. Any other items for future agendas? Okay, reports to the board. We do have, where are the retirements? Okay, I will come back to that. With that, we are going to actually just move to item 9, which are requests to address the board. So folks have been turning in cards. We will continue to accept cards until the final speaker has concluded. With that, we will start out with Olga Rodriguez, followed by Annie Markarian.
Hi, my
Hi there.
name's Olga Rodriguez. I've been living in Burbank since I got married in 1988. And when I first heard about possibly having this housing development over by a couple blocks from my house, I was appalled because it would completely change the environment in our community. And right now, you know, traffic is crazy on Scott. To think that we would have, you know, 35 units an acre is I can't even imagine. You know, I've gotten almost hit with my dog crossing, you know, Scott. So I just I'm just letting you know that as a community member, I am totally appalled to this. Okay, thank you.
Our next speaker is Annie Markarian, followed by Schlossman.
Good evening.
Thank
My
you.
name is Annie Markarian, and I've been a Burbank resident for over 30 years. My family immigrated to the U.S. so that their kids could have better opportunities. We moved to Burbank just as I was entering high school, where I graduated as the valedictorian of my high school class. I went on with a full scholarship to USC and ultimately finished my educational journey at Loyola Law School as a Sarah McNeil Scholar. This journey instilled in me certain core values, which include, at the top of that list, education, community, and affordable housing. If it was not for these 3 pillars, I would not be who I am today. And it is within that framework that I say Burbank Unified School District should maintain their focus and resources on educating youth and maintaining healthy and safe educational facilities. Don't divert your focus on developing and managing high-density subsidized housing. It's not your scope, it's not your charter, but that is what you have currently authorized an architecture and design firm to assess at Horace Mann. For those who don't know, Government Code Section 659147 was passed into law last year. This new law permits BUSD to bypass Burbank's zoning requirements to build high-density affordable housing on properties they own. They can build as high as 35 feet, must have at least 30 units per acre for jurisdictions within a metropolitan county, and must allocate at least 30% of units to low-income housing. This law permits BUSD to do this despite what our elected officials in this city have determined to be safe and sustainable in our communities. You're going to hear a lot of public comment tonight about why this is a bad idea, but what I'd like to do is respond to some of your comments from the June 1st Board of Education meeting. Board Member Ponser, you indicated that if Horace Mann is not being a good neighbor, to let you know. Well, here I am letting you know. A good neighbor would have engaged the community prior to entering into the contract with Perkins Eastman. A good neighbor would have heard our concerns before jumping headfirst into this nuclear option. A good neighbor would be transparent and collaborative. You did none of this, but you still have the opportunity to be a good neighbor. Board Member Tabbitt, you indicated that this is just an assessment of BUSD facilities and our concerns are premature. I disagree. The contract amendment you approved last time was not a generalized scope to see what options you have for the vacant property behind Horace Mann. Nor was it a generalized housing assessment of all BUSD properties. This was a very specific type of evaluation on a very specific parcel of land. What do you think an evaluation by a global design and architecture firm with no ties to Burbank will say? And when it says what we all know it will, we won't have any recourse to share all the real concerns and reasons why this idea is destructive, disruptive, and problematic. The time to stop this is now. President Ferguson, you said a few things, that you're thinking outside the box to attract educators with a shrinking budget. You don't need to go so far outside the box. Think about the resources you have. Collaborate with your labor leaders to find ways to better support educators. Find an accounting team who doesn't misplace $11 million. Use the money to bring educators' salaries back to market rate. You said this is a housing for teachers. Again, you're entering into this nuclear territory without a good foundational basis. Both the law and the Perkins Eastman evaluation's scope of work clearly reflect that this goes far, far beyond teacher housing. You also identified this as a fire zone. Yes, it is. How do you fathom bringing in high-density housing into a fire zone with an infrastructure that is already at its capacity? And finally, you said you didn't want to hand this over to private developers. Well, who do you think is going to build this? If there's one thing I've learned in my journey, it's that we all make mistakes. How we fix these mistakes is what defines us as leaders. This assessment by Perkins Eastman is a mistake, and you can fix it by taking the following 4 actions. Agendize this topic for your next regular board meeting. Cancel the contract amendment with Perkins Eastman for the housing evaluation at Horace Mann. Confirm that you will not assess Horace Mann for high-density housing. And commit to engaging the community before contracting for any future assessments related to the Horace Mann site. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Schlossman, followed by former board member Dave Kemp.
Hard to follow that. You know, the fact that you started this meeting 35 minutes late, Mr. President, is an indicator to me of the chaos within this organization.
Thank you.
The fact that you've agreed for years with former Superintendent Hill on his forcing critical race theory, his unrelating focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, his racist statement on the BUSD website, telling us how great our schools are, all the while sending his own kids somewhere else. telling people what books to read, telling people what words to say, special rights, not equal rights, calling people racist, homophobic, and sexist if you dare to disagree with him, calling a man guilty before a trial. Perhaps he was the reason of the 10 of the 19 principals, along with many others that are leaving our district. And just today, I got another email of an appointment of a new principal. Entered into a conspiracy to destroy documents with Mr. Paramo. And that, by the way, that should immediately rule him out as consideration for superintendent. The admission of Board Member Weisberg that she regularly destroys communications, official business documents, is problematic, and nobody has straightened, well, these two remaining people out. Okay. He says one thing and does another, and people get tired of that, of course. Did you finally realize that he was simply not qualified? The handling of the Horace Mann fiasco, that never should have happened. And let's clear up one thing. Just so we know, it was me who prepared 30 yellow papers and passed them around to those neighbors, because I thought they should know. We don't want that, Mr. Ferguson, and we don't want 12-step programs in our high school either, because your partners benefited from, suffered from alcoholism or whatever. You said it. I'm not making this stuff up. Okay. Now, my last 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, man, I go fast sometimes. Last year, 4 of you voted to retroactively give Mr. Hill a pay raise and give him an extension on his contract before it was even up. Now, that's problematic on many ways. Now, you didn't vote for it. Ms. Weisberg didn't vote for it, but I was here that night. Agakanian and Ms. Tabbitt, you voted for it. Now, I've got to ask you, Ferguson doesn't want to talk about it. What changed? It's costing this district hundreds of thousands of dollars, this fiasco. What is it that changed? It's a simple question, because all these things that I enumerated before, you were on board for all that stuff. That was okay. So something changed right away. And we want to know, this is our money. Only almost 4 minutes. Thank you.
Our next speaker is former board member David Kemp, followed by Debbie Kukta, former board member Debbie Kukta.
Good evening, President Ferguson, members of the board, Dr. Paramo, and district staff. I'm Dave Kemp, longtime resident of Burbank, a former teacher of 35 years at Burbank High School, and 12 years as a board member. Yeah. Sometimes when you're trying to heal what's troubling the district, makes your job very difficult, and you have to make some very tough decisions. Tonight you made probably one of the toughest decisions you'll make in your entire time on the board. By the same token, you made a great move in appointing Dr. Paramo as the acting superintendent. I've known Dr. Paramo for a long time, had the opportunity to observe him both as a middle school principal, assistant principal, a principal, and as a district administrator. I think he's well prepared. He has vast experience in the private sector as well as the public sector, and I think he is a very wise choice at this time to help create a situation where the district can move forward. With that, my congratulations to Dr. Paramo. Best wishes. I told you before, condolences on accepting this position, but I'm very proud that you're sitting there, and I think you're the right person to begin to heal the district. and fight on. Some people will understand what that means. As the board moves forward with district business, I remind you to be creative in the next time that you're setting your goals and objectives to create a situation where the district can move forward in a more positive direction. Establish goals and objectives that will properly address the issues facing the district today. This is a great district. We have great leaders. We have great staff. We have awesome teachers, which I know we just passed legislation, so to speak, to increase salaries. However, I think we can always do better in that regard. They're the backbone of what makes this district great. I want to keep it great, and I wish you all the best in moving forward. You have some difficult times ahead, and I have confidence you can handle it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Debbie Kukta, followed by Dr. Roberta Reynolds.
I would respectfully ask that I'm going to go over 5 minutes. If I could have, you can get Dr. Reynolds' permission that I go into her time.
Okay, without objection of the board to pull from Dr. Reynolds' time, is there any objection? Seeing none, Ms. Kukta, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I'm here tonight to read portions of an open letter that I wrote to the school board, Dr. Matt Hill, and Andrew Cantwell. This letter is in response to the board report on tonight's agenda, disclosure of accounting error and budget update. My name is Debbie Kukta, and I am BUSD's previous Assistant Superintendent of Administrative Services. By inference, this report impugns my integrity, my reputation, and my professional standing. The finger pointing at someone who hasn't been with the district since September of 2022 and is receiving blame for things that I would have had no control over is typical of the culture and district leadership which has caused so many principals, administrators, and other staff to leave. Last week, I heard rumors that I had hidden money that the superintendent didn't know about, but that Mr. Cantwell had, quote, unquote, found. What Mr. Cantwell actually found was his own error of not backing out of 22-23, the $6.9 million retro payment that was accrued and expensed in 21-22, but paid in 22-23. I've been in this community for a very long time, and anyone that knows me knows that there is no way I would have hidden any money. I brought a lot to this district when I joined its staff to manage business services. 4 years of performing financial audits with KPMG, 30 years running a successful business, 7 years serving as a BUSD board member, and 7 years serving as Burbank City Treasurer, managing a $450 million portfolio and the cash flow of the city, noting 7 years of clean audits, compliance, and financial, with no findings, not one finding, while meeting a myriad of complex regulations. I'm a certified public accountant, chartered global management accountant, and hold an MBA from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I'd like to address some of the points in the board report. The initial accrual of the retro payment in 21-22 was made in accordance with governmental accounting standards and best practices. Specifically, the report referenced modified accrual basis of accounting, which states that liabilities are recorded when incurred. This is in fact what we and the staff did for the 21-22 retro payment. Cantwell's report alludes that this type of accrual isn't common practice for school districts, and that is absolutely not the case. The total accrual amount was based on the AB 1200s that the board approved in May and June of 2022. AB 1200 was enacted in 1991 to prevent school district bankruptcies, and it requires that school districts make public the cost implications of negotiated settlements before approving employee contracts. The costs were calculated jointly by Human Resources and Fiscal Services based on the differential between current and new rates and applying that differential to employee data, and can't be deemed uncertain, as Mr. Cantwell claims in his report. Cantwell and Hill had 2 opportunities to reverse the accrual, one at first interim and then again at second interim. Tonight's board report deflects attention from Cantwell and Hill's 2 recent missed opportunities to properly account for the retro accrual and suggests the reversal of the accrual could have been reflected in the 45-day budget item that I oversaw at the August 4th, 2022 meeting. That is misleading deflection. At that meeting, the board approved and the board was provided with an update on increased revenues that were in the final adopted state budget only. Expenditures were not addressed. The multi-year projection was updated for the revenue amounts so the board could see the fiscal impact of the increased revenues on district finances. As an aside, the district would not have reversed the accrual until that amount owed was paid. This item was for informational purposes only, with no board action taken. Best practice says that it may be prudent to set aside reserves for contract settlements, especially if the new terms are expected to be less favorable than those in existing contracts. Contrary to best practices, against objections I raised when I first arrived, and ignoring the goal of transparency, the superintendent instructed the fiscal services director and me to book his cost projection of anticipated settlements directly into the current and future year budgets in the multi-year projections when fiscal reports were reviewed. Several other budgeting errors are noted in the board report. Best practice, as set forth by GFOA, dictates that districts continuously monitor the budget throughout the year, not just when the budget is being put together. Should actual reports deviate from the budget in a significant fashion, adjustments need to be made. It's clear this monitoring wasn't adequately occurring under Hill or Cantwell. In the letter, I go over some of the reasons for this, but I want to discuss just one right now. The fiscal services director was pulled away from her regular duties to conduct HR work and place her own job postings in job search engine Indeed, and monitor and screen employment applications and arrange for submission to human resources through EdJoin, an employment platform used by the district. During my tenure, I held 1 to 2 hour meetings with the fiscal team every week and had an open door policy where staff could stop by at any time with questions or concerns. We also brought in a consultant to assist the director with operational questions. These practices were an important part of the department's budget monitoring activities, denoting shared responsibilities. The Fiscal Services Department is not getting the consistent, ongoing support needed. Board members, I know firsthand what a tough job you have, and I wish you the best as you fulfill your responsibilities to the students, staff, and community of Burbank. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dr. Roberta Reynolds. Nope. Okay, there you go. Followed by Colin Kay. Followed by Alex Kane. Welcome.
Hello, board members.
Hello.
Thank you. I have never been to any kind of meeting ever. I've been here for 30 years, and I've been living right down the street from where your proposed development is.
Okay.
And I've been living there for 30 years. I've been walking my dog for 10. And in those 10 years, Hansel and I have been running into neighbors who have become our friends. And they've never come up to us and said anything more than, hello, how are you doing, everything. Every last one of them is upset in a big way, not just a little. They're kind of humiliated. This is a bad idea. You're in the business of taking care of students, building schools. Don't do this. Don't inflict suffering on the community by shoehorning or ham-fisting some big development on us. It's not fair, and you're going to hear a lot of that tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alex Kane, followed by Lisa Markarian.
Good evening, folks. My mom was a teacher and also an administrator, so the first thing I would say is I know you guys have a very thankless job, and a lot of you do it because you care, so thank you. I've also haven't been to a meeting quite like this in those days. You have a lot on your plate these days. It's actually really fascinating for me. It's a very interesting time. I'm here to speak against Horace Mann as well. I live on Brighton Street. I've lived there for 26 years. It seems to me that this dropping of housing onto something that is a very full plate, the ability to research and understand completely what's going on or what might happen after you're gone from the school board even, because often, I don't know if you're all parents, if you're here while your students are here, often the kids go to college and you go on with your lives. And what happens is left to the next group. Now, if you leave 120 units there and it's all government housing, well, it's a possibility, right? It's on the possibilities. Then we all have to live with that. And this is the only house that I may ever be able to afford in my life. It really means a lot to me. I worked since I was 16 years old to have a house. And the idea of that house losing a little bit of value, because I don't have a 401k, I'm an independent filmmaker. The money is in my house. When that house loses that value, I lose my ability to take care of my mother, who had a stroke 6 months ago. My money, my generational wealth that didn't help me buy the house, is a reverse generational wealth. $7,000 a month to put her in memory care. That's where a lot of us are in this neighborhood. We have our parents now living with us. Many people have adult children living with them. A lot of people are blue-collar workers, immigrants. It's a very interesting, very peaceful, and very unusual neighborhood. It's not necessarily very similar to other parts of Burbank, at least according to me, because I live here. But I love it a lot, and I personally feel that this would be very difficult for us. We're often walking the dog right when people are dropping off the students at St. Francis, and it's crowded. It's crazy right then. Doubling that up, tripling it, who knows? It's going to be ugly. And, so we're concerned, and that's why we're here. Thanks very much.
Our next speaker is Lisa Markarian, followed by Arpine Markarian.
Good evening. My name is Lisa, and I too am here to discuss the assessment for high-density subsidized housing at the Horace Mann site on the corner of Keystone and Scott Road. About 2 weeks ago, I happened to read a flyer being passed around the neighborhood announcing that something was happening at Horace Mann. It included a QR code linking to the June 1st Board Education agenda item and to an 84-page facilities master plan. If it wasn't for that QR code and a lot of digging, I would never have found the 2-page contract amendment with Perkins Eastman, authorizing them to conduct a housing evaluation at Horace Mann. And if it wasn't for that, we, as a hillside community of Burbank, would be none the wiser. We learned who that person was tonight, and I thank him for his time and his effort. Now, in a little more than a week, we've mobilized to over 100 households who oppose the development at Horace Mann, many of whom who are here tonight wanting to be heard. Everyone is here to ask the board to stop development at Horace Mann and instead refocus the school district's energy on education. Know this, we have just begun our efforts. You approved a $500,000 contract with a private design and architecture firm for an overall facilities assessment of your assets, roofing, HVAC, labs, so forth. But then you bootstrapped it to a contract to assess developing high-density subsidized housing at the Horace Mann site. How are these two things even within the same scope? What's worse is that the type of project fundamentally impacts the hillside community, but you didn't share it with any of us in any transparent way prior to entering into the contract. You did not make any effort engaging the community, nor does Perkins Eastman scope of work contain any community engagement component. Also, at the city council meeting, it was apparent that the mayor of Burbank was not even privy to this information. Impacted residents came to you on June 1st, before the approval of the contract amendment, and then again on June 7th after the council meeting. They asked very thoughtful questions to get more of an understanding. On both occasions, you attempted to spin the narrative by indicating that this is merely housing for teachers, because you don't want your teachers driving 2 hours to get to work. What you failed to acknowledge, however, is that this housing assessment is being conducted pursuant to Assembly Bill 2295 that stipulates very clear requirements which go far, far beyond teacher housing. It was reviewed earlier very clearly as to what those stipulations are. What you're looking at doing is building an absolute concrete jungle in a fire zone prone to earthquakes in the midst of our homes. You also tried to instigate fear among residents, stating that the alternative could be a private developer. Does the Burbank School District have the manpower to build up to 120-unit housing development? I venture to guess that that answer is no, and that you, in fact, would have to contract with a private developer for the project. And now, because of the board's actions, they would have to bypass all the loaning, or they would have the ability to bypass all local zoning requirements. We said it on June 1st, and we're saying it again. We support Burbank teachers. Pay them a competitive wage. Give them the freedom of choice of where they want to live. If you want to keep your teachers, support them. Don't indenture them to their employer for their homes. Teachers want what we all want: work-life balance, flexible work schedules, a sense of growth and prosperity, some type of hybrid remote work, but especially a wage that pays them for the impact that they make. How can you consider finding millions and millions of dollars for housing, but you can't pay your teachers? Engage with your stakeholders, teachers, unions, administrators. You can find a better solution than public housing. Your assessment impacts us, our homes, the place that we come to after long days of work to find peace and comfort, break bread with our family and friends. We're small business owners who are active and concerned. We're young families who'd like to send our children to BUSD. We're realtors, independent filmmakers, recent graduates who are going to be the future leaders of our community, retirees, social workers, mental health professionals, the firefighters and police officers who look out for us. We in this community are your middle class voting and tax-paying constituents. These are the people who make up our neighborhood, and we oppose the development at Horace Mann. The time to have public discourse about this isn't after you've received the report from Perkins Eastman. It's before. It's now. Again, we're urging you to cancel the contract amendment with this design and architecture firm for housing evaluation at Horace Mann and engage the community before you take any further action. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Arpine Markarian, followed by Lynn Weatherwax. So Arpine is next. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Arpine. I have been Burbank resident for over 30 years. I am here tonight to object Horace Mann high-density housing assessment. High-density housing is very, very bad idea. It will affect 91504 community in negative ways. Here are the negative effects of Horace Mann housing project. These are only the things that I see. I don't know about the things that hidden. Number one, heavy traffic problems and safety issues. The street at Keystone and Scott Road are narrow single-lane residential streets. We already have many accidents and hit-and-run drivers that damage our cars and properties. Furthermore, there is St. Francis School adjacent to Horace Mann. The student and the pedestrian safety will be greatly jeopardized. Number two, utilities. Negative effect of this housing. Water, power, sewage, and gas use. Scott and Keystone area was built as a residential area. Utilities usage for current residents now is over capacity, and it cannot sustain high-density housing project. Our utility rates are getting higher and higher every year. So this will be affecting the utility rates also. Number three, public transportation. There are no public transportation at Scott and Keystone. This area was built for residential use with narrow single-lane residential streets. People who are living in high-density housing areas has to live near public transportation to access economic opportunities. Number four, fire zone. The area is a fire zone as we all know it. High-density housing is an extra fire risk to existing residents and will adversely affect the neighborhood that we all love. Not to mention established habitat of the wildlife that will negatively be affected too. Number five, you might not be aware that in high-density housing proposed area at Horace Mann live many, many elderly, retiree, and disabled people. And there is also disabled care and living homes, facilities, just across from the parking lot on Keystone. So right across from the school parking lot, these homes will be majorly affected. That these people care for elderly and disabled people. And this community for elderly, disabled retirees, health and independence cannot sustain a project like this. We love our teachers, compensate them in other ways. You say it's subsidy for teachers, but not all teachers want to live shackled to their employer. And how are you going to compensate the ones that don't want your subsidies and want to live wherever they want? And also, what are you going to say for other Burbank residents who will say, what about us? Why teachers only? Thinking outside the box is not good when you are changing the makeup of the community and disrupting the flow of life in 91504 area. We know that it is an assessment. We would like you to know that we as community of 91504 area are united and will never be defeated and will fight against high-density housing on Horace Mann property. We pay our taxes, and I understand these houses will not be taxable. They will live there tax-free. Please stop wasting money for a project that doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. You already have upset the whole community with the exception of few individuals who have personal interest in this project. Thank you.
Okay. With that, our next speaker is Lynn Weatherwax, followed by Alice Hansen.
Wow, how do I follow that? I'm not that passionate.
It's going to be hard.
So, good evening. My name is Lynn Weatherwax, and I've been in Burbank for 30 years. My husband's actually lived in our house for 68 years. So, we reside on Buena Vista above Kenneth in the Hillside area. And I oppose the building of any subsidized housing, and these are some of the reasons that I do. Increased traffic. We already have increased traffic. I've actually lost 2 cars that were rammed into and were totaled. My neighbors as well. It's pandemonium there. There's speeding, people going through stop signs. Accidents already, as some of my former neighbors implied, happening on our streets. This has been problematic for years, and we really do not have any traffic enforcement. Ever. We never have anybody there to enforce any traffic, and we never get any help from city council, but I know you're not city council, that's not your concern. Most of the residents and families of the Hillside moved there basically, we're all middle-class people. We work really hard. I'm a nurse. My husband worked in the motion picture industry. We moved to Burbank because we want to live in a suburban area. We don't want to live in an urban area. If we did, we'd live in LA, right? We don't want to be LA. We want to be Burbank, okay? We want to be able, like you heard the other people, we want to be able to have a nice, calm environment. Now it's not so much anymore, and I guess if this goes through, it's going to be even worse for us because we don't really know who's actually going to move in there besides the teachers, and we don't know how many would be there. We're all hardworking. Already we've been impacted by so many ADUs, and I'm sorry for people who have ADUs, and the McMansions we've had in our neighborhood. The whole complexion of our neighborhood, it's totally lost its charm. I believe, I'm a teacher as well. I'm actually retired. I was a full-time, I worked for the County of Los Angeles for 39 and a half years. I teach at Azusa Pacific University. I'm a teacher, and I know teachers do not get paid what they're worth. So yes, I'm glad they're getting a raise. That's part of this whole problem. But I really want to know, has there actually been a needs survey done with teachers in Burbank to figure out whether really they need this housing or not? That's what I want to know, because I've been reading, like, in 2022, 2023, the school year in Burbank, the enrollment is down by like 1,000 fewer students. I know the reasons why is people are not having as many kids, and parents are putting their children in private schools. They're putting them in charter schools. They're putting them, they're doing homeschooling. I know this. My daughter's a teacher. Why? Because of all the safety issues, the core curriculum, the book bannings, all of the nonsense that's going on in the schools nowadays. People just don't want to put their kids in public schools anymore. I get it. Also, in our area, there's no real public transportation, as was said before. That's very hard if you're a person living in our area. There's a bus, I think, bus stop at the end near Glen Oaks, okay? And it's dangerous to even be sitting there, okay, because people are speeding on Glen Oaks. And so that's really dangerous there. So I think we really should spend our money wisely. And if you're going to subsidize these few people, these few teachers, and mostly they're entry level from what I've read, if we need to subsidize, why don't we look at, we've got a lot of apartments going up downtown. That's a better area. You're close to Metro. You're close to, the bus stations. You're close to mall, shopping, all of that. I could see where younger people would probably want to be there more than in the hillside area. So another thing is animals. A lot of times lately in the past 20, 30 years, because of all the building, all the animals have come down. So I don't know what's going to happen with our deer. We have mountain lions there, they're losing their habitat as well. So I wish that you would not build on, we don't need to build on every inch of Burbank. That's what's happening now. And I think there's better ways to help the students. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alice Hansen, followed by Debbie Waldman. Ms. Hansen? Oh, hi, sorry. You're making it. I was just making sure.
Sorry.
No.
Good evening, everyone. I'm a lifelong Burbank resident, homeowner, and taxpayer, and such. I am voicing my concern over this disastrous choice of Horseman location for proposed multifamily project. This was once a single-family home residential area, and this also has changed, and not for the better, with permitted ADUs and group rehab homes built for individual profit in residential neighborhoods. Yes, educators need housing, but also police and fire do too. And who there is equally, if not more important, to everyone in Burbank that lives and works here and utilizes their services. Years ago, city department heads were required to live here. That has also changed, as has the entire economy of this state and country. I would like to know how much money BUSD would receive for these 4 acres. Who's buying the land for development? Who will monitor the logistics of this folly? Who will be paying for additional water, electric, and sewer connections to accommodate over 130 apartments? If housing for school staff in Burbank is necessary, then other sites should be considered, as Horseman is not a good choice. Not every state decision is a good one, and this should and could be changed, as well perhaps our elected representatives. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Debbie Waldman, followed by Levon. Good evening.
Good evening, council members. My name's Debbie Waldman. My family bought their home in the Burbank hillside in 1959. I had moved away. I came back 9 years ago to help care for them. To care for them. My mom has since passed, but my dad is still there, and I had every intention of staying a Burbank resident. I love Burbank. Way back when we moved in, it was the perfect family neighborhood. It was where you wanted to go to raise your family. And even though the times have changed, and a lot of things have changed over the years, that one factor has stayed true. It's where a lot of people still have come to raise their family. Our neighborhood has changed, but we still know our neighbors. We love them, and we take care of each other. And that's hard to find these days. We're a very close-knit neighborhood, all of us. With this new state building laws, we've seen, as has been mentioned, so many of these new ADUs and, a multitude of people that have moved into our areas. And with that has come, again, more cars, with everybody jockeying for positions on our filled-up streets. Also, I live on Naomi, and both Naomi and Buena Vista are basically freeways. We get all the traffic coming down, and if Burbank PD would put a car, just sit a police car on our street, they could make a fortune in speeding tickets because, you take your life into your hands trying to walk across the street or even get into your vehicle if it's parked on the street. And it's very difficult. Adding the high-density housing, it just simply would create more gridlock in this area that we can't handle right now. And then they surely are going to have cars because there is no transportation, as has been stated. There's no buses that go, they're going to park down in Glen Oaks and walk. And then not to mention, again, our 73-year plus sewer systems, all of our utilities there, they were built it was done in the 50s. So it's all antiquated and, we're having problems with it already. It's all kind of flowing downhill right now. I did this kind of quick before I left tonight, and it's been said so eloquently by Annie, but it's just, there's got to be a better place for this project than up in our hills, something of this magnitude. I know school boards, you're supposed to work to benefit the children, so please don't contribute to the demise of this wonderful family area. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baldwin. Our next speaker is Levon, followed by Carlos de Verona. Hello.
Good evening,
Good evening.
everybody in the auditorium. Good evening to board. My name is Levoni Sajanian. It's 20 years I'm living in that future developing area. And at the day when I was buying my house, I was thinking I will be living in a peace area where I am living, and right now is very calm, very good area. And I'm here to say I am against the development of this high density because I can say 34 years I'm doing construction, and I have stepped up from the very bottom to top. Every development, every construction I've seen, I have met every city councils, every city engineers, inspectors, and I understand how this development company is getting advantage on city through the school board to get the area to do development, which all these people here are against it. So here is things I don't understand. When you're doing in a construction, any of city, any of area in California, if you want to do a little change in your house or in your construction, you have to get the permit from the city. And now I heard they said city is not aware of this development. It's weird. I can't understand this. So that is what to say. I'm against of this. I don't want my area to be shown public transportation, to be, because I paid that much money to buy this house to stay comfortable and peace. So another thing I was to add, I'm sure this is actually second time I'm in a meeting like this with the board, and I know you guys are have that power to control, not to allow any of development like high density to be in our area. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Carlos de Verona, followed by Javier. We'll get to the last name. It starts with a B. Excuse me. Go ahead.
Good evening, Board. Thank you very much for letting me speak, and my fellow residents from Burbank. Got a lot of great points here, and I would just like to add that it is a community that is, we all moved into this community, and we've all grown in this community. What is being proposed is going to disrupt this community in a way that I don't want to see. I don't understand how you could put in so much housing into this area. I invite all of you to go and look at the proposed site, drive through there, and just think of what it would be like with 120 units. It's insane. It doesn't work. But I want you to look. Please go and look. I don't see how this is a proper place for this kind of project. 120 units would probably mean 240 cars. Are they going to build parking for 240 cars? No. There's a school next door. People are going to work, dropping their kids off. How is that going to happen? Hi. That's all right. So the point I'm trying to make is, please consider us, all of us. This is our community. We don't need this there. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Xavier I'm sorry, what? Is it Baldwin? Excuse me. Now seeing it? Okay, now I see it.
A little slow. I had knee surgery a little bit ago.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Followed by Jack.
Thank you, board members, for letting me speak. I'm here to express my opposition to this development. I have serious concerns about what it'll do to the quality of life in our neighborhood, also about the safety of the children at both schools, what it'll do to the traffic, and I just got a fire insurance premium of $3,800. It went from $1,500 to $3,800, and I'm concerned what this development might have on that. The other speakers have all covered a lot of the points that I would make, so I'm not going to waste your time. I just want to let you know that I think this isn't a real good idea for the school district not to be involved in, because as you go down the road, whoever builds this project, somebody has to be responsible for the upkeep of the project. Do we want it to turn into a project like we've seen in other cities back east over time? And that, to me, is a concern. And so please think twice about going forward with this. I know most of my neighbors had just found out about it thanks to just a few people, that Annie and a couple of folks made this known to us. And so if you go ahead with your studies, I just hope that you do not proceed. But I'm sure that if you do, you're going to find the community up in arms, and all of us will be here en masse. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jack, followed by Nicole Drebecki. Welcome, Jack.
Hi, everybody. I'm also here to express my severe concern about the potential transition of the school district from a center of education and child development to landlording and housing development, specifically the ill-conceived development of the Horace Mann location. I graduated from John Muir, I graduated from Burbank High, and I did my undergrad and grad school at UC Berkeley. I saw a Cal sweater there, go Bears. I was taught by a Nobel laureate, a Turing Award winner, and I was taught by the person who's credited with coding the human genome. None of these educators compare to how incredible some of my teachers were at BHS. Mr. Dave Thompson, if anybody's curious. But I was also taught by faculty at BHS that literally wouldn't accept that teaching was not their calling in life. Now let's extrapolate your proposal for housing development as a solution for attracting teachers. You're basically proposing a system of indentured servitude, which creates great resentment amongst those required to serve it. You're going to create terrible teachers and single-handedly destroy the education of generations of Burbank students. I'm sure you're aware that Los Angeles is massively expanding their metro rail system across the entire county. Have you considered much simpler solutions to the issue of just providing a BUSD shuttle from metros to schools? I worked for IBM for 6 years because they gave me a shuttle from my light rail stop to my office. That's an immediate solution that will be significantly cheaper and more effective. Now let's think long term. Do you actually believe the physical location of a student and a teacher is going to be relevant in 10 years or 20 years? Look at the evolution of AR and VR technologies. Your proposed solution is such an antiquated concept, and I think you need to take this whole thing back to the drawing board. I echo everything that has been said here about destroying the community, the fabric of the neighborhood, the traffic, all that kind of stuff. But I think that your actual problem is not being solved by this potential solution. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Nicole Drebecki, followed by Ani Gafafian. Good evening, Nicole.
Good evening, President Ferguson, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Dr. Paramo, and members of the district and staff. My name is Nicole Drebecki. I am a PE teacher at Dolores Huerta and the new BTA president. I wanted to take this time to let you know that I look forward to collaborating with you, the Board of Education, and district staff this coming year. I will continue to work to ensure that our members and students' needs are represented fairly and effectively. Working together ensures us that we can be a united force when it comes to making sure we are providing the best public education we can. Now that we are aware of the accounting error and budget update, moving forward, there must be a renewed effort and system of transparency and open lines of communication between BTA and BUSD. Having strong communication in place helps build trust and leadership, builds authentic relationships. This is what I want to bring to BTA. Our teachers, counselors, nurses, and speech and language pathologists deserve to be treated with respect, not only with words, but in deeds. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ani Gafafian, followed by Kathy Sessinghouse.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ani Gafafian. When my husband and I first got married 35 years ago, we used to live in LA. We would drive around the 91504 area and would dream to one day maybe afford to buy a house there. In 2003, when our third child was going to be born, we finally could afford to buy a house there, and we moved there. First for the schools, second for the area. We wanted to be somewhere where there was no apartment buildings, no low-income housing. So when we moved there, the schools were top-tier schools. Not anymore. The schools have gone down very much, and that's why a lot of people, my friends, my neighbors, are taking their kids to private schools. My neighbor wanted to put a second floor on her house. The city didn't allow it. How can they build a 3-story building there on the hills? How is that possible? How will that be approved by the city? We spent a lot of money on our house. When we bought the house, it was very old and we couldn't afford very expensive house. For 20 years, we've been spending slowly a lot of money to bring the value up for our house. So that one day when we do retire, we can use that money for our retirement, because God knows what's gonna happen when we retire. If you want to do something for the teachers, give them raise. They do need it. They don't need housing up on the hills in that area. Give them raise. Oh, and I just found about this yesterday on Next Door Neighbor. How come I'm a resident there? I live on Scott Road. I didn't know about this project until yesterday. That's it. Thank you.
Our next speaker Our next speaker is Kathy Sessinghaus, followed by Ashot Gafafian. Ms. Sessinghaus.
Hi, good evening, BUSD Board and cabinet members and other district officials. I'm going to read from my phone, so please apologize if I don't look at you directly. My name is Kathy Sessinghaus. I am the former Director of Food Services from 2011 until 2021, and a local resident of Burbank for 53 years. I was sitting at home watching this meeting. When my prior boss, Debbie Kucka, was speaking, I felt compelled to come up here tonight to support and speak. I never shared my voice with those people, many of you in this room. Some of you I did. I strongly feel that the lack of internal district support, not only for her, but for my department, was severely lacking, which resulted clearly in my early retirement from the district. I was given a lot of lip service without any results to solve critical issues despite Debbie's support and intervention. I want you all to hear this tonight, and those of you in this room who did not give me the support that I needed to run my department clearly know who you are. Good night.
Our next speaker is Ashot Gafafian, followed by Peach Davtian. Welcome.
Hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me fine?
Yes.
All right, so I'm probably one of the newer generations. I also grew up in Burbank, class of 2010, go Bulldogs. This, like everybody said, I think we all align, we're all on the same mission. I think what you hear is pretty consistent from everyone. But at the end of the day, we're here to ask questions. So I don't know too much about it. Just like they mentioned, I just recently found out about this too. I think there's definitely going to be a big snowball effect here. I think more and more people are going to find out. And this is just a calm before the storm, because a lot of property owners like ourselves are pretty much on the same mindset. That's why we live in the area we live, because we want suburbs. If we wanted to live in the city, we would have moved to San Fernando, gotten by AMC. We don't want that. Don't turn our suburbs into that, and don't take away what we have. Now, the questions are, again, pardon my ignorance, I haven't had time to look into this, but who's going to live there? Or is it only going to be teachers? Are we going to do background checks on them? Are we going to do safety checks? It's right behind the school. Our kids are our number one priority. That's their safety that we're putting in, jeopardy. What's going to happen? Who's going to oversee it? What protocol are we going to have? And what's going to be done to make it fair for everyone? Because we are what makes Burbank USD. Without us, this wouldn't exist. So we're the kids. I was in Burbank USD. I studied there. I graduated from there. And down the road, I would hope for my kids to do the same. But you know what? If this is the start of a new beginning, I wouldn't want my kids to live in Burbank anymore. So hopefully it doesn't come to that. Thank you, guys.
Our next speaker is Peach Davtian, and that's the last card I have at this time. Welcome.
Hello. I'm a fairly new Burbank resident, but of course, we live here with pride because Burbank is known for its very good reputation. Unfortunately, things are happening recently in Burbank that I'm not very proud of. I wasn't here for the housing project, but listening to these community members, why are teachers being hired from afar to begin with? What's wrong with the local applicants? What are they bringing? What are these afar applicants bringing to the table that our local applicants are not? I hope there is not a strict agenda behind this. And if anything, you can offer travel reimbursements for these teachers or staff members. I think this community has a word to this, and you guys should be hearing them out. The reason I'm up here is because I'm very concerned about the safety recently around school district. I live very close to Burbank High School. I have 3 teenagers. Unfortunately, I had to homeschool one of mine due to the recent upcomings. And My son was involved in a hit and run while he was walking home from school August 31st of last year. I filed a report with the police department because we cannot find the driver of this gray sedan. Thank God my son is okay, but there was a kind witness who saw my son fly 50 feet and was about to get run over after he landed on the ground. I filed a report. I had to rush him to the hospital to get a clear scan of whatever happened. Luckily, thank God, nothing serious happened. He had a huge scrape on his side. But now I'm stuck with bills, of course, obviously, but that's the least of my concern. This is maybe the third attempt that I've tried made, and this is about the fourth incident I'm hearing about a hit and run in the school district, and like half a mile from the school where this happened. There are city cameras. I got them immediately. The guy was great at the city to get me these surveillance videos, but nothing is really visible. I could see from afar what happens. It's so heartbreaking to watch my son go through that. But why are there no obvious and clear HD cameras around the school? This is not even half a mile from the school. My son walks home because my husband and I work. What if something serious had happened to my son? Something serious did happen to my friend's child right in front of Burbank High. She was hit and run, also walking home. I really need for something to happen before we have a serious tragedy around the school, and not being able to find these hit and runners because they think we're not going to come after them before one of our kids pass away of these incidents. Please look into this. Ms. Weisberg, I'm very embarrassed that your actions of not standing for the Pledge of Allegiance that you just did. If students if students in school do this, they're immediately disciplined. It happened. I was working in a school. They are disciplined.
Hold on.
That is not cool. Well, not anymore, but because probably of people like her.
Okay. Okay. Our next speaker, we do need to respect everybody's time so that everybody has equal time. Our next speaker is Jerry Milady, followed by Mayor Constantine Anthony.
Good evening, President Ferguson and members of the school board and Acting Superintendent Dr. Paramo and district staff and people at home here. My name is Jerry Milady. I'm a teacher here in Burbank. I teach at John Burroughs High School for 23 years. I don't actually live in Burbank, but I think I do. I spend more time in Burbank than I do at my own house, but I grew up here in Burbank. I'm an alumnus of Burbank School, so I'm very proud to be that. First thing I want to point out to, I'm pretty sure none of you were on the school board at the time, but the Burbank teachers asked you folks to get an educator to be superintendent, and that was not happened. You got someone who was known for a fiasco in BUSD, and we were told that we had no right to speak about this. Under the picture of freedom of speech, it was told we didn't have the right to bring that up. We didn't have the right to question our elected officials that night. It was very embarrassing. And now look what happened is that it was come to pass. And I'm really, as a history teacher, I'm really disappointed. A lot of things that was said tonight. First off, about the Pledge of Allegiance, I didn't see if Dr. Weisberg did that or not, but that's not important. But the question was, kids would get in trouble. There is 2 Supreme Court cases from the 1940s that the kids do not have to stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. So if there's a problem with that, then people need to work with their Congress and with the Supreme Court. So when you say they don't have that right, they do have that right. So I just want to point that out. Another thing is, I get so tired of hearing about CRT, and I'm changing kids, grooming kids or that. You know what? If I had that power over kids, They would get their homework in on time. You know, they would get off their phones. Most of you who do not in a class who do not know what those phones are like. So to say that we have this power that we're changing kids, making them worse, I don't understand that. I find it embarrassing that we are banning books like about Diary of Anne Frank, about the women, the African American women who helped put people on the moon, and other things like that, because I don't know, someone feels uncomfortable. That history is uncomfortable if you want to teach it right, and you got to know that. Finally, I had no clue about the housing thing at Horseman. As a kid who grew up in the valley part of Burbank, I really don't care about the Hertz side of Burbank, but I understand their problem, and I think they have a point. Why aren't we being paid more? I checked. I know the reasons why, but you're signing off on the thing tonight, and I want to check my thing. I actually found the salary schedule when I started 23 years ago. And I covered for inflation, and we're still not making what the inflation's been in the 23 years that I've been here. So, and I guess the point is, like, I heard all these things about teachers need more money, teachers need this, teachers that. I fully agree, but this report here, I bet most of us in this room do not know what it's about. And I know part of it because I've had classes from CTA, but I still don't quite fully understand it. But this is where the problem with the money is. We are a rich town, but we don't have the right demographics. And until we do, and then it's not going to happen unless we do something else to make it happen. And I fully agree back to being a history teacher, I fully agree about having subsidized housing by my employer. Just go to Chicago, Illinois, and visit Pullman National Historical Park and see what happened there. Quickly, I got 1 minute. About ideas about housing and recruiting new teachers. There is tons of ideas about internships and other things that I never heard talk out of the box here. And I also feel like, and this is something that you're talking about morale here in this district, is that we teachers, at least I do, I feel sometimes that we're asked our opinion, but it's something that gets totally done a different way. And they're like, all of a sudden, like, oh, we're doing it this way? What a surprise, we didn't know that. I mean, in my department, we had a lot of different materials we could use, and we picked something that was totally bad, in my opinion, bad during the pandemic when no one could really contribute to it. Ethnic studies is being put on us, but not really. What we said we needed is not going to happen, and I just don't. Why we asked? Why do you care? I mean, and that's when I think teachers really need to feel that their voice is meant.
Thank you, Mr. Moiti.
Okay,
appreciate it. Mayor Constantine Anthony, and that is the last card I have at this time.
Good evening, board. I don't normally come down here. The city and the school board, we do have distinct separate governments. But the reason I am here today is because people are upset. Things have changed. And my concern is giving the residents an understanding that we have a continuation of government, that the city supports you, that we will be moving forward. Yes, changes happen. Yes, things happen. But we have elected leaders who are educated, who know what they're doing, and we support you guys. We're going to get through this. We're going to get through this, and we'll all be through it together. And okay, I guess I was wrong.
Excuse me. Hey, I understand everybody has opinions. I get it. We're receiving it from all of you today. In this moment, excuse me, Mr. Schlossman, this is your first warning, okay? We are not calling out, because what we are doing is modeling the civic process for our young people. And that is everybody fills out a card, everybody gets a voice, and then the discussion occurs. We're not booing people, we're not shouting them down, we're hearing them, and we're learning how to be critical thinkers. That's America. So, even if we disagree with the mayor on items, this is not the forum to boo him. With that, I'm going to let you continue with your time. And please, if we can just hold that off, there's other meetings for that. So sorry, but it's true.
Thank you, President Ferguson. Yeah, if you want to boo me, I'm on Tuesday nights. The other thing I wanted to say, I know some people are concerned about the housing. This is a big issue, and I mean, you guys are just hearing about it. We've been dealing with it for years. I want the residents to understand that what is happening at the state level is really affecting everything at local government. From Senate Bill 9, Senate Bill 10, Senate Bill 35, Senate Bill 330, Senate Bill 10. I can list all the Assembly bills and the Senate bills. Housing is coming. We cannot simply sit by and say we want to keep our Norman Rockwell white picket fences anymore. And I don't boom. I'm not the one signing these bills, but they're coming. We have to act responsibly. We can put mitigation measures in effect. We can look at what it's going to look like, and we can make adjustments and protections for the neighborhood. And the city wants to work with you on that. We have ways of mitigating these issues. There are educated people working here and working with the city that know how to deal with this stuff. We're not gonna ruin the city, I promise you, I promise you. We know what's going on. We have people who've experienced this in many other cities that are helping us out. We're gonna get through this. We're gonna get through this. Like I said, things change, we work together, and we create solutions. Lastly, I want to congratulate Mr. Becky on her election. Congratulations, well done. And, sorry.
Thank you. Sorry.
And the only other thing I would say is, I was at Sataquola Elementary a couple weeks ago. I was at Glendale Unified just last week. I hope and I pray that the same thing doesn't happen here. And I know that we have people in this city that protect our kids, that are elected to make sure they have the best education, that they are elected to make sure we are safe and we are an open and inviting city. And we can tell people the world over that this is a place where everybody belongs. So thank you for the work you're doing, and thank you for the work that you're doing. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you. Mr. Schlossman, this is your second warning. We've told you not to call out. Last one, you're out. Thank you. With that, any other people would like to address the board? Seeing none, we're going to close public comment at this time, and we're going to go to staff responses to public comment.
Thank you, Board President Ferguson. I'm going to keep my comments as short as I can. Thank you to all the residents who came forward today to voice your concerns about development at Horace Mann in that area. Since the board has already signaled for a special study session on Horace Mann, I will just withhold my comments until then. Ms. Kukta, thank you for coming down tonight, and thank you for putting your position on the record. We do have a board report on this topic on the agenda, and Mr. Cantwell will be responding to that. Kathy Sessinghouse, I just want to say that I'm glad you came to speak your truth, and I know that wasn't easy, and I respect the fact that you did that. Mr. Becky, I appreciate the meeting we had today, and I look forward to working with you. To Mr. Kemp, I just want to say thank you. Your words meant a lot to me. And lastly, I want to say to the board that I love Burbank Unified, and I will serve in any way and in any capacity you think is fit so that we can keep the district moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's give him a round of applause for stepping into this moment. Thank you. Even street size. Thank you. With that, we will go to board member responses. We will start with Ms. Ponser-Kamkar.
Thank you, President Ferguson. I want to echo the thanks to Dr. Paramo for stepping in during this uncertain time. We appreciate your leadership. We appreciate the trust that you've built in this community. I know you and I haven't had a lot of a relationship just yet, but you'll get my 25 question emails sooner rather than later. As we've said, we're going to have a meeting on the housing piece sooner rather than later as well at our next scheduled meeting. And so I think we should talk about this then. But thank you to the speakers for coming out. We appreciate it. We hear you. Thanks.
Ms. Tabbitt.
Well, of course, thank you to everybody who came down to speak. Many, many people. This was a very frustrating meeting. for me to sit here and listen to all of you come and speak about the proposed Horseman project on something I've never voted on. I've never seen it before. All I know that I voted on was a feasibility study to see across the district what that means. I know one speaker didn't necessarily believe that the feasibility study was a feasibility study, but that it was us signing with a developer to develop something. I've lived in Burbank all my life. I've lived in various portions of the city. I know above Glen Oaks how awful the traffic is. They're 2-lane streets. Parking on both sides in many places. And as the house, as houses have grown and been enlarged and more people live in them, it's really difficult to mitigate. I sent my children to Horseman Child Care Center from the time they were 8 months old till they graduated and went to elementary school. I know what traffic's like up there. I can't imagine this company coming back and saying, yeah, great idea, put 120 units up there. I can't imagine this school district whose job is to educate children, as many of you said, would be in the business of housing. That's not what we do. I still yet I'm hoping that those who asked for the feasibility report might be able to expand on it. But to my knowledge, this board, the 5 of us, have never approved any amount of units at any of our school sites, regardless of this slip of paper that somebody put on your doorstep. You can go back and watch every single meeting on video. And sorry for my old-fashioned word, on video. You can stream it, whatever the words are, and you will not find that this board anywhere approved any kind of development. Part of the feasibility and the facilities master plan across the board is to look at our school sites to see what we need to do to keep them up and running for the children of our community in a safe way. Are the roofs workable? Is technology workable? Do we need to add to it? What kind of help will we need for our community to keep our school sites? The last bond we had, we did do some building on our school sites, student classrooms, because we needed more space. And that is, in my opinion, the only kind of building that our school district should be doing, ever. And if by some miracle, I don't know of how many of you've added on to your house, but building in Burbank is about $600 a square foot. It's not there's no money. No one would be able to afford to put 120 units there for subsidized housing. It just wouldn't work. This is not a project that's in the works. It's just, I don't know, how do you want to put it? You might be able to explain it better than I. I've said it multiple times. I've responded to emails that everything you've said as a Burbank resident, I agree with. It's not I can't think offhand, fairness, any one of our school districts, and again, we're not in the building industry. That's not what we do. We educate children, and we need to stick to that. So I think I've said that enough. Yeah. Okay. So thank you for coming out and protecting our city, because it is important to me as well. And I happen to like the way it is. Thank you. So welcome also, Mr. Milady used to come all the time. It's nice to see you back. Thank you. I enjoy hearing your thoughts and opinions and hearing about the kids from your perspective. It's great. Mr. Becky, welcome. I hope to see you more often. And once again, thank you. Dr. Paramo, you know you have my, and I'm not purposely leaving anybody out. Let me just say that. Thank you to all the speakers who came and spoke. But thank you, Dr. Paramo, for stepping up when we needed you. And I know that we're going to move forward very well. I'm looking forward to working with the entire staff. You all have some extra work on your plates, and we'll figure it out. So thank you.
Dr. Agakanian.
Yes, thank you. So as a homeowner, I understand your concerns, and I can also tell you that it did take me a year to remodel our kitchen. So I understand the process itself. I think for all of you who are concerned, I can tell you right now, just like when you own a property, you want to sell it, you get an assessment. We're just looking at the properties that we own and we're doing an assessment. There is no project. So I want to make sure we're clear on this. And I also want to make sure you understand that this is a great opportunity for all of us to come up with creative solutions when it comes to looking at some areas that could, we could look at working with the city itself, but don't get me started on that, because if I do, then we'll be here all night about what we can do. I just want to let everyone know that there is no project. We're just assessing, just like when you assess your property, to looking at it and to see what we can do creatively, because there are some concerns. When it comes to safety, there are some guidelines we have to follow. But I want to make sure that personally, I can tell you right now that there is no project I'm looking at. We're just assessing this, and I love the feedback, and I want us to hear from you, but also to look at some other creative ways as well, where we're not building big. I'll be concerned too if a big complex were next door to me. It would devalue my property too. So I want to assure you personally that this is just an assessment, no need to fear. And I think sometimes we're concerned, we jump to conclusions, but we want to make sure that you understand that we're looking at every site, not only because there are certain sites that do need to be assessed, but also when it comes to the safety of our students. There are a lot of items that are being outdated that we need to also look at it. So with that, I also want to congratulate Dr. Paramo for stepping up. And also, I want to thank Mr. Kim for being here and speaking tonight. But again, we will have the hearings about, once we get the reports on assessments as well, and I would welcome all of you to come and put in your feedback as well. Thank you very much.
Dr. Weisberg.
Thank you. So when the decision, I want to talk about the standing for the pledge. I talked about this a lot when I initially decided to do it. And you have every right in the world to not agree with me. I respect that enormously. But I did want to share a little bit about the choice I made. And it was a choice. It took me a really long time to make the decision. After Uvalde, and there we all know have been any number of school shootings, it devastated me the way it, I'm sure, devastated all of you. And one of the things that was hardest for me is I didn't see our government, our elected officials, stand up for the safety of students, stand up for the safety of teachers and community members. And I made the decision, and it took me a really long time to decide that I wasn't going to stand until our government stood for us. I know I have dear friends and family that are police officers who are members of the armed forces, and they don't fight for a piece of fabric. They fight for this country and our right to protest. James Baldwin has a great quote that I think about a lot. He says, I love America more than any other country in the world, and exactly for this reason, I insist on the right to criticize her perpetually. When we love something, we fight for it, we disagree with it, we take hard stances. And I know that when I made the decision that I was going to be opening myself up to a lot of criticism. And again, I don't expect to change anybody's mind, but I did want to explain to you that this is a thoughtful decision made by me because I want more and better for our country. And there are not a lot of ways to do that. Running for office is one of those ways. And making a choice to think deeply about what this country means to me during the flag salute as opposed to standing is a powerful and important choice. And I hope that our students also engage in meaningful, thoughtful patriotism and civic engagement. It's probably the most important thing we can teach them. Mr. Becky, so excited to continue to work with you. Really have loved what we've already done together. We have a lot of work ahead of us, a lot of really hard work ahead of us, but I can't think of anybody I'd rather be doing that hard work with. And Alex, yes? So I also want to say thank you to Alex. He's our new CTA rep. He's been fantastic and a real asset, and I've enjoyed getting to know you. I look forward to more conversations. For everybody that came to talk about Horace Mann. So I want to tell you the thing that I heard clear across the board from everybody, which is how much you love Burbank and how much you love your community, which is really powerful, especially for you to come down on a Thursday night and spend a really long time communicating that love and that passion. Here's what I want to ask of you, and I have no right to ask you anything, but here's what I want to ask of you. Please come talk to us. There are people in our community who are preying on your fear, preying on your anxiety, and those are really valid fears and anxieties that each one of you expressed tonight. You're scared about your housing value. Of course you are. That's scary. Most of you worked your butts off to be able to afford anything in Burbank. I rent. I can't afford to live in Burbank, so I know the kind of sacrifice many of you made in this room. None of us take it lightly. Everybody here lives in the same community. So those fears are real, especially right now with the financial world the way that it is. I'm just asking you to continue to have a conversation with us. Please don't allow people to prey on your very real fears and anxieties, because when that happens, we can't work together. I know that when I repeat what we all said, it may ring untrue, but I heard a lot of things where people were talking about the number of units. There's been no conversation about units or stories or the number of people who are going to be there. A lot of you brought up, or some of you brought up, the idea of paying our teachers more. Of course, we desperately want to do that. And we could have a very long and very boring but important conversation about funding for schools and why Burbank doesn't get the same amount of funding as other places. It doesn't mean we're not going to continue to push for more funding for our teachers. But what it does mean is that we have to look for ways to support our teachers and our public servants. So when people say, well, who's going to live there? We don't even know if there is going to be there. We just know that we're trying to figure out ways to support teachers. I think, I'm going to scroll down really quickly. I think it was Peach who talked about local applicants. So it's not about there not being local applicants. It's about saying when we have new teachers or teachers who have moved to the area and they really want to work in Burbank for the same reason that all of you want to live in Burbank, because it's an amazing community in which to live, but they recognize that there's a disparity in salary because we don't get as much money as a different district. So what we're trying to think of is what are ways that we can not indenture them, but incentivize amazing educators who also want to live here in Burbank. So I hear what you're saying, but it's not about like who it is or where we're picking from. It's really about trying to say to our teachers, you matter to us. And whether it's this or something else, we're really trying to find ways to retain amazing educators, especially post-COVID when we've seen a huge exodus of educators leave across the country, not just in Burbank. We're really looking for ways to get creative. It doesn't mean it's going to be this housing. So I think I'm just asking people to not allow yourselves to be sort of taken in, because I think everyone in this space is smart enough to know. Talk to us, email us. I said this at the last meeting. I gave out my card. We're reachable all the time by email, so I don't want anybody to feel like you have to wait to communicate with us. You can also talk to Mr. Cantwell, Dr. Paramo. We're available to you, but we are not trying to do anything underhandedly. I think a lot of the problem is if people here do not have a child in BUSD, and I don't know how many people here do or don't have kiddos in BUSD, you wouldn't have gotten the email about the agenda that went out. So it wasn't hidden, it was just not something you might have seen. When we have the study session, we'll have an opportunity to answer more and more questions. But I think I'm just encouraging you to continue to communicate with us, and we'll do it from a place of authenticity and honesty, and I have no doubt that you will too, based on your comments tonight. Ms. Essinghouse, I had the opportunity to meet with a lot of your amazing former staff over last summer, and they shared a lot of the same things that you shared up here. I mean, these are amazing, amazing women and men who felt like they weren't being heard and listened to. So I think I just want to really acknowledge that, and I know that for you, having invested so much in the district, how that must feel for you. I don't know exactly how you feel, right, but I can guess. Yeah, maybe 2. Yeah. We should get more thumbs. I hear you. I think that, I would love to sit down with you and just hear more about it, so we don't have a 5-minute limit, and just, looking for ways to really better understand. So hopefully you'll be open to that. I'll shoot you an email and we can connect. Thank you to Ms. Kutka for coming down. Thank you to Mr. Kemp for coming down. I do also want to thank, I know this is not in a little bit, but our cabinet and Dr. Paramo. Talk about a difficult year that has now launched into an unbelievably difficult summer. Endlessly thankful for all of you, for the work that you've done, for the work that you'll continue to do. I know it wasn't an easy decision for you, but I'm deeply, deeply grateful to everybody here for the endless amount of time and effort. And I do want to take a quick second to also thank Dr. Neiman. I think this is her last board meeting. I don't want to say too much because I know you'll be like, but I want to sincerely thank her for the amount of work she does behind the scenes, whether it's negotiations or navigating through COVID or whatever it is. She did the work of like 20,000 people. Your absence is going to be felt in more ways than I can even know or anticipate. But I wanted to thank you so much for your guidance, for always sitting down with me and explaining things, because there's a lot of stuff I didn't understand, and always doing that with an unending amount of patience. Also bringing your dog, and then your daughter's dog, because they are so cute. So I just want to thank you and wish you the very best as you head off to this new amazing new gig. Don't forget us little people. And again, thank you to everybody for speaking tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Weisberg, and thank you to my colleagues, and thank you to everybody for coming down tonight. Want to begin by acknowledging kind of the speakers who spoke on items that weren't, the main subject of tonight, which was the Horace Mann feasibility study. First, want to begin with to Nicole Drebecki. Congratulations. Welcome to a new chapter of service. As you can see, it's a lot of fun. And we are all, it's a challenging time to lead. It's a challenging time to try and bring people together on any concept. But we wish you the best. And we know that at the end of the day, you're going to work towards your core mission of, serving our teachers and making sure that all the folks who are represented by BTA, are well taken care of in this process. Congratulations again, and looking forward to working with you. I do want to thank Ms. Kutka for coming down for her commentary. Obviously, Debbie Kutka handed me my diploma. Debbie Kutka came to my mother's funeral. Debbie Kutka has been a major individual in my life. And to see anybody that frustrated and that hurt causes pause, to say the least. So thank you for coming down, Ms. Kutka. Ms. Essinghouse, thank you for coming down and being a little bit of backup, but also offering a little bit of your story as well. I'm familiar with some of it, not all of it. But again, all helpful context, and I appreciate it, so thank you. And to former board member Kemp, who quite literally grew up with my grandfather and literally heard stories about them getting lost walking down to Santa Monica following the railroad tracks. The roots go deep in this town, And you know, that brings me to a little bit of this horseman conversation. You know, I grew up on the hillside too, so I look at Miss Tabbitt, and it's like the tale of two hillsides, you know, and it couldn't be more night and day. And here's what I will say is that I love our hillside communities. I don't think that 91504 was my life for so long. I know where the coyotes run. I know, you know, I know how fast traffic is up there. I know how the stop signs that have been installed along Kenneth Road over time have just become more and more numerous and more, you know, slowing down traffic, slowing down a number of things, but also just slowing down just general, you know, mobility within the neighborhoods. I care very much about those neighborhoods. What frustrates me, and again, you've heard this, right? You know, and then we had the Cape Crusader himself, you know, jump up and say, it was I who passed out the flyers. Okay, well, great. I want our communities to be informed. I'm happy with our communities being informed and engaged. I want that. It's critical for our success. So one of the motions I'm going to ask that comes back, that will say that if there is any form of development, decision about development, discussion about development, in any way other than just receiving a report on the feasibility study, that the district give out notice a month in advance, okay, and that we send a mailing to each home, each property owner in that vicinity. And that can be a 1,000-foot vicinity, whatever we feel is appropriate, which is normal noticing requirements, so that way everybody gets a heads up. Because we're genuinely not afraid to have people engaged. We want you engaged. But I want you to be equipped with the facts and where we're at in this process. Where we are at in this process is, what can we do with that land? What can be done with that land? Again, there have been some speakers who have been here previously, and again, many of you who've lived in that neighborhood, because many in the 91504 have frankly inherited properties from their parents. It's generational. There have been discussions, Jess Telemontis wanted to put soccer fields up there, right? Like, there were many different conversations about what to do with that parcel of land up there. And so what I attempted to say in these moments, okay, was Burbank Unified, we see the budget problems. We're seeing this is a whole different ball of wax, humiliating. But the very real budget problems we have as a district are not going to be solved unless we are truly creative thinkers. That does not mean 130 units of housing in the hillside community or in the Horace Mann lot. Where that got taken from was a conversation where I talked about the concept of housing and what it could possibly create for our community, which is if we were to create X number of units, and I threw out numbers, and then that number was turned into the flyer that haunted all of your dreams, you know, not okay. What I'm talking about is if we create a certain number of housing units, does that ever get to a place where there's enough revenue coming in that we could guarantee every family, pre-K through 5, access to childcare in this community through the school district? Revenue just doesn't go nowhere. It goes back into our community, providing universal access to childcare for communities that really need it. I'm not talking about 100 units of housing in the corner pocket of this community. That's insane. That's insane. I've been up there. I lived up there. I'm worried about those communities too. Is 10 units of housing possible? What is possible? If it's absolutely nothing, then I've got to tell you. Because again, I believe in telling the truth about this, right? How many have heard about SB 9? Okay, Senate Bill 9 basically says if you've lived on a property for a certain amount of time, you can subdivide it into 2 lots now and build as if they were 2 separate houses. So density, and this was passed by the state. I worked for a man who voted against this, okay? And I worked my tail off against this bill because why? It threatened the nature of communities just like ours. But it passed anyway. Sacramento imposed it. Why? Because we need new housing. And just like you, neighborhoods across Southern California are going, not today. I like my neighborhood. I like my neighborhoods too. But our neighborhoods are not going to stay how they are right now because of this law. Just this law. We're not talking about the ADU law, because in theory, you could have one property now divide into two properties and all add an ADU. If you do not think that's already going to add to the problems of the hillside, it absolutely is. And that's wrong. I don't like those impacts, but that's without us doing a dang thing with Horace Mann. So changes to the hillside, to say that they are not coming, is to not be, one, forthright, or fully knowledgeable about the factors that are going to impact this community, which is so precious. I know the generation. I knocked on doors in the 91504 in both of my campaigns, and some of the best conversations in my life that inspired me to public service were had on the front stoops and the front doors of your community. Hands down. So I believe in this community. I don't want to lie to this community. I don't want to mislead this community. But I'm going to be very real with saying what development looks like. It is coming whether we like it or not because the state has imposed it. So when it comes to Horace Mann, when it comes to that project specifically, not all development in the city, here's my concern. Our revenue, kind of doing this seesaw thing. We're doing every kind of maneuver possible to stay viable in the budget world. The challenge is that we can only do that so long. So the concern is that do you come to a point in time where people then decide, okay, we're going to sell property because that's the easiest thing to do. That is my worry. We could be doing work now to protect that property, to make a appropriately sized development that works with the neighborhood. And again, that doesn't have to be 100 units. That doesn't even have to be 30 units. We just have to know what's possible and what really could nullify impacts on that neighborhood. So this is the beginning of a process. Some people are willing to sit through it. Some people are not. I'm okay with that. I understand how scary some of this is, but the reality is that I'm here ready to extend a hand. I'm not here running away. And I'm telling you that this is at least a concept that could deliver something that makes our community unique. And we're already unique, but we've accomplished incredible things as a community. This generation can deliver universal childcare access, can deliver a pathway to that. I understand that means some impacts on your community. It's not, I promise you, it is not 130 units worth of impacts. That's ridiculous. So, and that is my commitment, that I would never go for that volume. A high-rise tower? My God, no way. No way. It's just not that, it's not that lot. So, I, again, am very committed to doing this. Last meeting, I asked district staff to begin by creating an email list for those who want to sign up, so that anytime there's an agenda item related to this, you will be notified automatically. I don't know where that's at. I would like to get that done this week. Thank you. Okay. To members of the neighborhood, with the confidence that we will be those communicating partners, because I want to be that, and I know this board wants to be that, even if Ms. Tabin and I don't agree on the future of the hillside. That's fine. You know what we both agree on? We all want you to know. We all want you to know when to show up. Whether you're with me, with her, or you're with your own opinion on things, fantastic. But we're not hiding this, and we're not trying to move a project. We also don't control land use. We don't. We do have some rights that the state gives us to build housing and to build it specifically for teachers or for school employees, which is not what private developers can do. Private developers can't discriminate on who they lease housing to once they build it. State law now allows school districts to do that. Why? Because school districts across this state are building housing. So, does that mean all the burden needs to be on your neighborhood? No, that's not the case. And we are looking at other properties that are not in, neighborhoods that are not, and some are adjacent to neighborhoods, but we're looking at everything and saying, what are our options here for classrooms? What are our options for potential housing? What are our options for softball fields? Okay, all of those things have neighborhood impacts. And I'm sorry, I have to tell you, I think there's a lot of people who would rather live next to 10 units of housing than a softball field with lights and with all the things. Burbank High's light issues, those went on how long? So this is what I'm saying. So again, I'm not here to be combative. I am here to say this is a concept. We can absolutely work with the neighborhood. The neighborhood should absolutely inform this process if we are going to move forward with it at all. We're not going to use revenue. This was never about taking the same money we use for teacher salaries. This would be bond revenue. This would be something that we would have to pass separately. Okay? So there's a lot of these nuances with education policy that are challenging to navigate on a flyer. And you know, the people who passed out that flyer knew it. So again, I believe in the 91504. I know this community well. I know how much you value your neighborhoods. You do not want them threatened. And I know how much, if you could keep it the same, you would. I'm there. But that's not going to be our reality. So I want to work smart with this neighborhood. Again, I want to see that motion come back, if my board colleagues don't object, to a noticing requirement that any conversation on a board agenda related to development of Horace Mann automatically trigger a mailing noticing requirement, and then come back with the number of feet that's standard for any kind of development disclosure. I think it's like that. I don't know off the top of my head, and I don't want that put on another flyer. So with that, there's a lot of conversations ahead. Last parts of my comments are simply this. So first, to Dr. Neiman. Dr. Neiman, first of all, we have a resolution for you. So a resolution of the board, not here right now, but we will find an appropriate time to award that to you. But one, you were very much a leader for us in one of the hardest times, and that was our pandemic. With that, and in that time, not only did you maintain grace, you know, you helped a lot of us get through it in a lot of different ways. And when our community was struggling the most, to just meet the bare minimum, you figured it out in a lot of ways. I can't thank you enough for that. I also am very proud of, you know, one, that we got the chance to work with you, and that, you know, through that process, I got to know a bit of your story and where you come from and where your strength comes from. And you're a powerhouse, my friend. And it's been a privilege to watch you overcome the hardest moments and be innovative in really struggling times. So with a lot of attention on you at all times, because everybody needed you to be your best at all moments. And that is an impossible situation at times. So I want to thank you for being that leader for us. I am so thrilled that new things are coming for you. And we're going to miss you tremendously and your skill sets. Dr. Paramo, we'll talk more, I think, next meeting about and check in with the public and give more time to frankly talk about you and what you want next. But thank you for stepping up in this moment, and thank you for being there for our kids. With that, I do just want to thank or say our retirements. So I want to just honor Diana Basta, who we all know, who is retiring and who began her service on September 1st, 1994, and Christopher Mitchell at Huerta Middle School, who began his service on September 7th, 1989. So we want to wish both of them, both institutions in their own right, in this district, a very well-deserved retirement. And with that, we will go. Did I find the agenda? And we turn on the AC, because we have the lovely, I'm sorry, we've got stadium lights up here. I'm sorry. We'll go to item, I'm sorry. There are 80 papers up here. That's all good, thank you. Oh, and on the back, Cindy, thank you for always looking out. And to Joseph Kruger, who began his service on April 1st, 1993. at Around the Bell, so at Roosevelt Elementary. Thank you for your service. With that, we will go to item number 10A, disclosure of accounting error and budget update. I'm going to propose that we do items 10A, 10B, and the public hearing. And then we take a 5-minute recess.
Yeah, great.
So 10A, 10B, 11A, and then a 5-minute recess. Okey doke. Thank you.
President Ferguson, board members, Dr. Paramo, staff, and Burbank community. Before I begin this report on the disclosure of accounting and budgeting errors that took place over the past 12 months, I'd like to personally apologize to Ms. Kutka. It was not my intent as the author of this disclosure to in any way imply that she or anyone else did something to intentionally hide money or otherwise with nefarious motivations. And so if that was how my report was interpreted, again, I truly apologize both to her and to anyone else who may feel that was my motivation or intent. I also would like to apologize to you, the board. I stand up here every few months and give you a report on the finances of our district. At first interim and at second interim, taking place in December and March, where I give you my assurance that we have thoroughly reviewed our budget and ensure the accuracy and that we are giving you information that you can rely on. That helps us also sit down with our bargaining units and be able to discuss in full good faith and disclosure of our fiscal position. And the information I gave you this year was wrong. And so, again, in response to comments made earlier this evening, I in no way want to sound as if I was not at the head during multiple budgeting errors that took place. And so I am deeply sorry, as you guys staked, or as you guys made very clear, your priority for funding various initiatives this year in reliance on what we provide to you. I gave you bad information. So I'd like to explain to you how that occurred and what this bad information was. When we were negotiating, well, last time you saw the budget, it was that second interim. At that time, we were anticipating an ending fund balance of approximately $16 million in unrestricted funds for this year. We knew that as March progressed into April, and certainly as negotiations with BTA continued into early May, that we were going to not be able to pay BTA a raise in this current fiscal year. There just was no ability for us timing-wise to potentially reach a settlement and then have that be approved in time for payment this year. And so we knew that we were going to be ending this year after backing out that and a few other just normal changes that take place during the budget season, that would be ending at approximately $25 million as the ending fund balance. What significantly changed between early May and this evening was on May 31st when I first became aware of an accrual that had taken place for the raises for last year. On July 20th, the district accrued $8.7 million, the expense for raises to BTA, CSEA, BASA, as well as a vacation payout for CSEA members. That was accrued for single budget items for each of those three groups. And so that was an error that we accrued it that way. There are approximately 600 unique account strings for the way that we would typically assign an expense to be able to differentiate expenses between everything from an elementary teacher to a food service worker working overtime. And so we should have been coding to each of those lines, and that was not something that was done in that July accrual. We also made that accrual prior to having payroll run the calculations on the exact amount, and so we ended up over accruing by over $1 million, and so that's also a separate issue. We've worked very closely with payroll to ensure that the accrual, which will take place this year for the negotiation that we are asking, the tentative agreement we're asking you to approve this evening, that will be accrued for as well. So again, accruals, I don't mean to suggest in my report, accruals never take place. They take place when you are able to identify with certainty the expense and are able to properly code it to the right categories. And we will be able to do that by early August. And so when we bring back to you unaudited actuals in September, the expense for BTA raises, the retro raise that would go into effect if it's approved this evening, will be coded to the 22-23 fiscal year. Okay. So again, the key issue was that this accrual took place in July, but there has to be two steps to the accrual. The expense where hitting in 21-22, and then the second half of it is to remove those expenses from 22-23 when the actual payments are hitting. And that's the step that wasn't done. We also did not, so we didn't have the second half of the accrual, and we did not adjust the budget accordingly this year. And so as a result, again, throughout the year, we've been misstating our financial position by approximately $8.7 million for that one issue. There were a couple other budgeting errors that took place, again, under my watch over the past 8 months, including the inclusion of, or double counting CSEA's salary study expense for this year. That will be something also that you can see in this report. And so the net effect is, as a result of what we identified over the past week, is that our ending fund balance, it is financially, it's good news for the district that we will be ending this year with a projected ending fund balance of $36 million on the unrestricted side.
Okay. So if we can. So thank you, Mr. Cantwell. Not easy, but also the situation we're in is now not easy as a result. So one, I want to inform members of the public that basically within 24 hours of us, being notified of this, we all swept into action to do our part to understand the situation. We all connected with staff. And then I have now since individually met with Dr. Promo and Vice President Weisberg with all of our stakeholder groups, including the Burbank Teachers Association, Burbank Association of School Administrators, the California School Employees Association, our PTA council leaders, or at least two of them. And then I certainly reach out to our foundation leaders, but haven't fully connected before this time happened. So we have done everything we can to reach out, to talk about this, to lay our sins bare here, because one, our integrity is so crucial. Our journey towards more, towards integrity and clarity that we can trust after a moment like this is really critical. And so, and I think preserving trust looks like doing a top-to-bottom of review by an outside party. What does that look like? Who are some organizations that we could potentially look to do some sort of to do an audit of that sort that would be third party, and again, not in-house, because obviously the systems within the house have not suited us in this moment.
Yeah, excellent question. So certainly we see as an element moving forward, in addition to, again, meeting with our partners, both BTA, CSEA, and BASA, being able to pull in a third party who is able to help us evaluate our systems. We do have confidence that we have identified, again, the critical error that took place over the past 12 months, but we want to have third-party validation for that and make sure that we can communicate out to the community, that we have our hands around the issue. We also know that a third party can help us evaluate our systems and make sure that we are using best practices for school accounting in 2023 and moving forward. One of the main organizations that does that is FCMAT. And so we've been already receiving information about what various options of services that they would provide could look like. And so that's the main organization that supports districts when looking at financial systems and being able to provide information to the board and the public about the fiscal health of a district.
What does FCMAT stand for?
Financial Crisis and Management Assistance Team.
Okay. Okay. So as I remember, FCMAT quite literally takes over failing schools and school districts.
They have two separate ways in which they come into a district. With the districts, or at the district's invitation, or without the invitation of the district, but by certain statutory situations that could occur.
Okay.
We obviously are not in that situation. The only way that they would come into the district right now is through our invitation.
Okay. Are there other organizations that could do this work as well?
School Services of California is the other major player, major consulting group that supports districts when it comes to the fiscal operations.
Okay.
In addition to those two large groups that serve public schools in California, there are a number of CPA and audit firms that are able to analyze systems and provide recommendations.
I think next steps on this obviously look like selecting a vendor quickly. I believe it's safe to say and to give direction that by the next meeting, we have a contract of some sort ready for adoption.
Just a point of clarification, we're talking about our next regular meeting. We have a meeting next week for LCAP, so it would be our next regular meeting.
That is correct.
Okay, just want to be clear.
So our process takes some time. It takes 72 hours to notice a regular agenda. So again, that would be, you have 2 days, go. So we're not there. Make no mistake about it. This is a crisis of confidence in this district. And when we've gone out to ask for parcel taxes, and when we say to bargaining units over and over again, we're out of cash and we can't bargain that, what the heck?
Understood.
So to me, I want frankly, the hungriest bulldog to look at our finances. The ones that turn over because again, I've lost confidence in the numbers I'm looking at anymore. I just can't look at them and go, hey, members of the community, we can stand by this right now until this review is done. I think we're also going to have to talk probably about the scope of this and just how deep we're going. Frankly, I think a lot of those conversations aren't meant for public light because they may go into systems which are sensitive and or personnel generally. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also want to make sure that we also follow up with policies and procedures when it comes to issues in this matter, not only for public to know, for us also. Again, someone who teaches accounting, I'm a bit concerned, and this is a big concern. I'm glad we're looking at third party as well. So I think that should be part of that as well, Mr. President.
So what I'm going to do is, those ideas are helpful, but what I want to also do is make sure we kind of have a vessel that kind of keeps tracking on this. Ms. Ponser-Kamkar works in education finance. God bless you, and understands some of obviously the nuances around these moves and these accounting. But if we could potentially, as board president and Ms. Ponser-Kamkar, work to kind of define a scope of this, and then work with whatever company we decide to move forward on. To me, FCMAT makes sense. One, because again, you want the crisis people. My understanding is they also do levels of public disclosure about every audit and work that they do, or scope of investigations that they do, or however you would define, however you would categorize that work. But they're all public, and it's not going to be something that we control. Correct?
That's correct.
Okay, that sounds lovely. Because at this point, whatever is in, I want out in the public. And I think there isn't a board member or staff member up here at this moment who wants to withhold. And if so, not a part of our culture.
That's right. Absolutely.
Ms. Ponser-Kamkar.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Cantwell. I just want to be clear on the short term moving forward. So, and you and I have talked about this a couple of times, but I always want to make sure that I'm clear on things. So One, in terms of the accrual for this, the raises that are in the AB 1200, is that accrual going to be made in this current fiscal or next fiscal?
So the accrual will hit this fiscal year. We will book it sometime around August 10th. And so we bring unaudited to you by September 15th. And so it will be an unaudited actuals as an expense for 22-23.
Got it.
And so then the second half of that would hit for 23-24 when we actually are paying it. So the way that accrual works is that the expense is actually being paid out it'll be in August or September. That as those expenses hit, there will actually be a negative. So that way the expense doesn't look like it's hitting this fiscal year because we already have that initial accrual.
Got it. So when the cash goes out, it will go against that
Precisely.
liability to reduce it.
That's
Thank
right.
you. And so is that kind of the plan for how we do this moving forward then, at least at this current point? Because my understanding is that that is not what was happening in the past until this previous year. Is
That's
that right?
right. So the historical practice was that we did not accrue, period.
Right.
The correct practice is to accrue when the liability is incurred if it's, again, knowable and ascertainable. And so what we're going to do is make sure that when there are expenses like this, that before we actually close the books, that we are able to properly classify to the correct account string, because one of the problems was that we only coded this to a single unrestricted resource and account string. And so, for instance, special education has now been the expense is underreported for last year and overreported for this year. And that goes across the board for every other resource or every other categorical that we have as well.
Okay.
And so, yes, we will accrue when we have a liability incurred, even if it's not been paid out in the fiscal year, if we're able to properly ascertain the amount and be able to code it correctly.
Okay. Can I keep asking questions? Is that all right? All right, cool.
Yes, you will need to translate eventually for many members of the public.
We'll just be
Yeah,
up
but
here
true.
having our accounting conversation.
That's
That's super helpful. So talk to me. So one of the things we've also talked about is where would we have seen this? And it's my understanding from looking at the SACS reports and the first and second interim that this would have been either impossible or very hard to detect from those reports. But my understanding is also that the auditors looking at last fiscal did not have any sort of problem with this. Is that right?
That's right. So our audit report passed without any findings. And so, again, this was not an illicit or accounting practice that rose to a situation again in last year's audit report. And I don't believe it's going to result in an audit finding for this year because we were the ones that did discover it within the confines of this fiscal year.
Because the books haven't been closed yet,
That's
essentially.
right. So we are not going to have to modify our unaudited actuals.
Okay, and we close the books once a fiscal, like full close.
That's right. So our fiscal year ends June 30, and then we actually have 90 days to. Sorry, I did my math wrong there, actually. We have 60 days plus then within 15 to get into the board by September 15th. We have 60 days to close the books and have it given to you by September 15th.
Okay. Is that standard across kind of districts our size to really only fully close annually?
That is a state requirement.
Okay, but doing it more often is
Not a possibility legally.
really?
So reconciliations?
Yeah, reconciliation, I guess, is really
reconciliations, we do monthly for a variety of purposes. Again, we do budget revisions on a near daily basis, but the actual large interim revisions take place twice a year, and they come to you. The only discretion that we have there, and those are by state mandate, the only discretion is that you could do a third interim revision, and that would be taking place over the past 30 days or so from actually right now. That third interim comes in May.
Okay, great. I had one more. Anybody else? Seriously? Just keep going. There was one other one that I wanted to ask you. We talked about close.
You did ask a question I didn't actually respond to, and so I apologize, and I would like to clarify.
Yeah, go ahead.
How could someone have identified this by looking at either first interim or second interim? Not possible. There, not only in what was publicly disclosed and through our SACS reporting, but also through all other budget documents that we have internally. There was no breadcrumb, there was no trail that could have been tracked for this current year to identify that. It would only have been by looking at last year's unaudited actuals.
Okay.
Or through discussions otherwise.
And part of the reason for that is that it sounds like when you're going through kind of shoring up the budget every day or every couple months,
Sure.
You're only really adjusting the parts that are changing, right? And it sounds like revenue has been the big one that we've adjusted over the last several interims, because that is what's been changing at the state level, but that we didn't really recognize this until we were going through kind of finalizing things for the upcoming budget year. Is that right?
Yeah, well said. So just to nuance it a little bit, we update our expenses at each interim revision as well. However, the way we update it is not by always looking at all of our actuals. And so instead, just as an example, we have worksheets that will be looking at every position in the entire district, every staffing position. And if we know that a position is vacant when we're doing a revision, then the budget's going to be updated based on that vacancy. And so there's a number of different reasons also. If if a new construction expense or repair is identified, we'd be updating the budget for that at those revisions. But our budgeting practice that currently exists in the district did not have us looking at all of the actuals at those interim revisions to be able to fully update based on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay. So first things first, based off of that conversation, I'm going to ask you to establish a glossary of terms. I'm not
Absolutely.
joking. And put it on the district website, right?
Absolutely.
That conversation needs to happen at the free-flowing rate that it did. Having said that, actuals, what? First interim, what? What is that in the context of school finance? Because we have now screwed up, we now need to educate a community at a greater level than ever before. So that glossary of terms needs to be kind of the first first step towards that. So if we could get that out within the next week or two.
Absolutely.
I want to understand that you also have a ton on your plate as well. So if you could work with the superintendent, the acting superintendent at this time to kind of figure that out, that would be great. But other than that, I will move that the board authorize Doctor. I gave you, there you go. There is so much work ahead of us right now. And it is monumentally challenging right now. But I will ask that the board authorize sponsor Kamkar and I to serve on a committee that will develop the scope of the investigation and not really, more of a review of what happened. If there's an investigation that's required, we'll get there. But we don't know yet. We don't even know what we don't know yet. That's what's also very frustrating about this. That's one. Two, that we direct the superintendent to create a communications plan where regular communications about this, as appropriate, can be released to the public, and a communications plan to basically redistribute should we use somebody like FICMAT or others who distribute information publicly. Those two, I think, are the primary components. And that we eventually have a time to review that full scope with members of the public of the review and what it looked like. That can either be done after the fact, if things are sensitive, or before. But that at some point in time, the public knows this is where we looked, this is where we double-checked, and this is how we did it, to the best of our ability, so that we are as accountable as possible in this process. That is my motion. Moved by myself, seconded by Dr. Weisberg. Further discussion? I want to thank each of my colleagues in this moment, because this is going to be a ton of work for the next few months as we try and sort this out and give clarity to the voters and the residents of this community. Not one person said, I can't show up for a special meeting. Not one person said, I'm not available. Everybody's been on phones, everybody's been making calls, and everybody's been trying to find a way out of this. and not through any shell game. Do you know how exhausting it is to have marched in 2005 as a kid saying, you're hiding money? And for that never to have been really, really true until my time as school board president? That's how I feel it that personally. But that is our community. We're not hiding money. But again, when we can't account for it, that's what people get to say. So that is where this is at. We've got to do this. So with that, thank you to my colleagues again for this work and for the work ahead of us. Go ahead, Dr.
And
Raghuthan.
again, thank you, and I think the audit will help. Look, I mean, numbers are absolute when it comes to accounting. I think having the third party look at this, but also for future, because again, the practice, I've never seen anyone do it, what you just said. It's kind of surprising to me. But again, maybe this will also create future guidelines where we're not talking about this is the way we did it, you know? Thank you.
Okay. With that, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Thank you very much. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 5-0. We'll see at the next regular meeting for which agency we hope to contract with, and then and all the features that come with that contract. So with that, we will go to our next item on our agenda. And if members of the public have additional questions, I'm going to ask the superintendent if we can send out an e-news tomorrow with the contact information of the board, our email addresses, and the email address of Mr. Cantwell and yourself as well. Thank you, Dr. Promo, for that. Sorry, I'm already adding a ton to your plate. But also we got work to do, so I don't know. Okay, with that, we will go to item number 10B, the first reading of the 2023-2024 Burbank Unified School District Local Control Funding Formula and Local Control Accountability Plan, or the LCFF and the LCAP. Dr. Anders and Dr. Knapik are here today to present. Thank you.
Thank you, President Ferguson, members of the board, Dr. Paramo, BOSD staff, and community members. I just want to share where we're at with the local control and accountability plan for next year. Just a little bit of background for anybody just tuning in to this process. We met on May 9th, the town hall meeting to discuss the plan for next year. We've also had 4 community meetings this spring to outline different parts of the plan, focusing on each goal, goals 1 through 4 of our BUSD goals. Tonight is the first reading, so that means that we have completed our first version of the plan. We've also submitted it to the county for review and waiting for feedback from the county as well. So I just have a few small slides to present tonight about any updates or changes since we've met on May 9th to discuss the plan for next year. So a couple of adjustments that have been made to action items within the plan. One is to increase the FTE of our high school counselors to 3. This would be to include the counselor at Monterey High School in the LCAP plan. Previously, that position was funded through CSI funds, but our graduation rate increased so much at Monterey that we no longer receive those funds, which is a good problem. But we need to find funding for that counselor in other means. Another place where we need to increase our funding is our student services attendance specialist and foster homeless position. The reason for this is there were other funding that was being utilized to partially fund that position that has run out or not renewed, and so we need LCAP to fully fund that position going forward. Another action item that will increase is translation services. This is the result of an increase in the rate that we pay our translators, so we're just naturally absorbing that cost in our LCAP plan as well. And then finally, we look to increase our ELD SEDI sections. This has been an ongoing topic throughout our spring meetings, as well as our May 9th town hall meeting, that the influx of immigrant students and our English language learners, especially a couple of our sites, has increased the need for support for those learners, and so we hope to provide funding to create new positions or to sustain the positions that we saw increase this year. So along with that, an update on our budget as far as where we anticipate our local accountability plan being next year. So this slide is a repeat of a slide that we used at the May 9th meeting with updated numbers. Primarily, the two primary increases or changes to this slide would be that the revenues for this school year increased by about $350,000. That increased for a couple of reasons. One, our unduplicated count has been slightly increasing throughout the year, and so that's hard to account for until the end of the year enrollment's complete. The other piece is that the budget at the state's been fluctuating, and so this is a more accurate account for our revenues when it comes to the supplemental funds for this year. The other place that we've seen a significant increase is for next year's revenues, and that's to the tune of about $1 million in next year's revenues. And that, again, is mostly due to the changes from the state as far as funding in the last couple months. So our potential estimated carryover at the end of next year is $1,065,394. We we'll carry that over just as we have in the past, and if we do have any carryover to that tune, then it'll be used in the future plan for 24-25. I would also just like to remind everyone too, next year will be the third year of our 3-year cycle. So when we go through the LCAP process next year, it'll be an opportunity to look at the whole plan top to bottom to revise for our new 3-year cycle going forward. And then there are also in the board agenda packet an appendix, and these are the slides that we reviewed at the May 9th meeting. So that was all I had for tonight as far as our first reading. We will revisit again next week for our second reading if any adjustments need to be made.
I had a quick question just for people who might want to go back and watch the 4 town halls. They're on our website, yes?
Yes,
Great.
Our LCAP website has the 4 spring meetings, and then also the May 9th meeting, I believe, is on the board agenda website.
They're really helpful. So for anybody who's looking to gain a better understanding, because this is really complicated, it's broken up in a way that I would encourage people. I'm not as financially literate as some of my colleagues are, so I always learn a lot from them, and you and Dr. Knappich always do a fantastic job. So worth checking out for anyone who wants to learn a little bit more about this.
Thank you for this. I really appreciate it. I know LCAP is a ton of work, not just the financial side of it, but going through all of the metrics and all of the actual accountability in the accountability plan. So I want to thank you both for that. And I attended, I think, 3 of the 4 meetings, and I really appreciate the way that you engage with community members and that you saved all of the questions that people asked so that they could be in the LCAP. I think that's great. I think what I would love to see, not for next week, but just in general moving forward, where we're showing kind of what the goals for the LCAP were and whether they were met or not, you can figure it out, I think, for the most part, especially if they're numerical metrics of we want to see this grow by 2% every year. I would love for that to just be even clearer for our community of like where we're meeting the bar and where we're not. I also understand that the last 3 years are, to use a technical term, bananas in terms of trying to capture some of those things when we're not testing kids in a particular year or things like that. But it might be helpful. That's kind of my only suggestion on content and format. But thank you for this process. It's huge.
Yeah, I wanted to speak to that too, because hopefully we'll have stability in our accountability system with the state. So part of what you were mentioning is the last 3 years is that the state basically suspended the dashboard. They also suspended state assessments. So a lot of these accountability measures have been very difficult to measure throughout this 3-year plan. So hopefully going forward the next 3 years, we have more stability in that sense.
Okay. Further questions on the LCAP? No? Okay. I did step out for a bit, but again, know how much work this takes. And I heard Ms. Sponsor-Kamkar's, really echoing that. So I did want to just say that personally, and thank you to both of you. Again, it's the paperwork you don't see, folks, that really, again, are a part of the audits, that are a part of everything we do, that I think really goes underappreciated until we encounter these moments where you realize just how important everything really is. So thank you both.
Thank you.
No further questions on this? Then great, we will go to, I believe we are now going to the public hearing on this. In my script. Oh, wait. Yep, so we are going to, that's just the first reading, so it'll be coming back next Thursday, right? Next Thursday at 6 o'clock at the district office boardroom on the third floor. That will be where we will be voting on the actual budget and adoption. So members of the public, next Thursday at 6 p.m. Looking forward to seeing you there. Finally, we'll go to the public hearing. Item 11A, public disclosure of the 2023-2025 negotiated successor to the agreement between the Burbank Unified School District and the Burbank Teachers Association, BTA, in accordance with AB 1200, Chapter 1213, Statutes 1991, AB 2756, Chapter 52, Statutes 2004, and GC 3547.5. With that, do we have any speakers? We do, and that is Schlossman. That's not what you put on your card, and the Brown Act requires me to read what is on your card, and you put Schlossman, so I put Schlossman.
You referred, that's fine.
There you go.
You referred to me as the Cape Crusader. Okay.
Didn't call you up, though, by it.
Well, my mistake.
Thank you.
You know, all I've ever asked for is transparency. Give people the information they need to make a decision. Don't spin the information to your benefit for you and the BTA. I'm not being cute. I'm speaking facts. If I ask a question, answer a question. The old superintendent would say, I answered that question, and he would move on, and I wouldn't be heard. And maybe I was asking the question for other people to hear the answer. Now, specifically what I'm referring to is teacher pay and how deceptive you are with these numbers. And I fell for this when I first met Mr. Hill. I asked him, how much are you paid? And he gave me some number. And then I asked the question a different way. What is your total salary? What is the total benefits of the benefits? And the number was $100,000 off. So, with regards to your teachers, please clarify for me, and I want to ask this question in the clearest fashion I can, and I'm going to use a hypothetical with round numbers. If a teacher is making $100,000, do they get a separate contribution to their retirement, their CalPERS? It was my understanding that the district contributed 20% on top of their salary, and the teachers put aside 10%, and that equaled 30% for their retirement. I'm confused. Is it 20%? Is it 25%? And this is information that we should have. Is a teacher making $100,000 or $125,000? Because that's truth in advertising. Wouldn't you agree? We had the prior president of the BTA come up here like she was a pauper and said she didn't have money. And I personally believe she probably had, after all these decades of service, more than $1 million.
Thank you. Staff responses to public comment? Seeing none. Mr. Moody, was it for this period?
I was going to answer this question.
So public, well, here.
It's in public comment. It's okay.
No, hold on. Hear me out. So if you were doing it to answer his commentary, that may not be what the purpose of the public hearing is. The public hearing is on the contract. So if you'd like to speak on the contract, feel free to turn in your card, because I want you to be able to participate. But if it's just about rebuking what he said, that's not the purpose of the public hearing. The public hearing is for commentary on the contract, the adoption of the proposed contract.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. With that, we will close that public hearing, and we will move to item 11B, which is the next public hearing on the 2023-2024 Local Control and Accountability Plan and the budget. Are there any speakers who would like to address the board? Seeing none, we will close this period of this public hearing. This is where we did talk about a break. Do we want to keep that break?
Do we want to do it after the first reading? I'm open to whatever.
I'm just checking in with colleagues right now. Let's go. Let's go. Great.
Yeah.
You're good? Okay. We're going to keep going then. Okay, so we will go to item 11C, first reading of the district's 2023-2024 proposed budget. Mr. Cantwell? Thank you. Thank you.
Can we
Okay.
get the PowerPoint up? There we go. Board President Ferguson, board members, colleagues, and community. This evening is the first of two agenda items over this current meeting as well as next meeting, in which we review the proposed budget for this upcoming fiscal year, 23-24. So just to orient ourselves, we talked about this a bit already with my earlier agenda item, but to make sure that we understand where we are in the budget cycle. Again, our fiscal year runs from July 1 to June 30. And so we have to adopt our budget by on or before July 1. I bring back to you an update to the budget in December as well as in March. And so that's the iterative process. As we mentioned earlier, we actually end our fiscal year at the end of June, as I said. We spend a few months with making sure that we can fully close the books, account for all expenses and revenue in that year, and we bring to you in September the unaudited actuals. So that's the full cycle. So today we are on our first of two meetings for budget adoption. We are required to identify, to certify our budget. We are pleased to say that we will have a positive certification, which means that we can meet our current obligations as well as the next 2 years, the 3-year obligations. Because we will maintain a commitment to the public to fully disclose our teacher and classified pensions as we do each year, we have this slide that identifies the cost of our pensions. 19.1% is the district contribution to CalSTRS. 25.37% is the current year's contribution by the district for our classified staff who participate in CalPERS. STRS is able to maintain their current contribution rate at 19.1%. However, as you can see, CalPERS is increasing their rate. Next year, we're anticipating it going up to 26.68%, ultimately going up 2 years later over 28%. And so what that means is that the hypothetical employee who might be earning, for round figures, we'll say $100,000, that individual would have a district contribution if they were certificated of $19,100. If they were classified for next year, it'd be $26,680.
Mr. Cantwell, please.
We do not have many employees who are earning that level. The key thing here with talking about pensions, though, is just how much that has increased.
Yes, yeah, that's what I really wanted to underscore in red, where we were, it's been a while that we've been paying into this additionally. 2013.
Yeah, so That's right, exactly.
I
Very,
believe.
Very good recollection. So for the past decade, the state, we have no local control here. We don't have local control on these decisions. It's required by the state. They're the ones that set these rates. We do not have the ability to say that we are not going to participate, nor do we have the ability to say that we are going to contribute at a different rate.
Nor were we part of the problem.
That's right.
We didn't create the problem, but they said, nope. We didn't create the problem. No one asked us to solve the problem. We were told. And the community needs to know then that this percentage of money is coming out of our general fund, which means it doesn't get spent on their kids.
Well,
it does support teachers in their retirements, yes, but it's a payback. It's not a pay forward. So
I will say just quickly, I think here's the thing. We can be frustrated by the amount we're being asked to pay by the state, which is astronomical and bananas, and also acknowledge the vital importance of supporting our teachers in their retirement because of the...
Which we would at a regular percentage.
Right. I just want to differentiate what you're saying, which is not that you don't think teachers deserve it.
Of course not.
But rather that we have been saddled increasingly with a higher and higher percentage when it used to be, it was always a lot, but it used to be far more manageable budgetarily than it is now. It's
which contributes to our budget crisis, which means we can't. It makes it more difficult for us to pay teachers more.
And I do, I've been on the board with Dr. Agakanian and Ms. Habit for, 87 years now. But it feels like that sometimes. It's always adventures, right? But when it came to finances, it truly has been very devastating when it comes to PERS and STIRS, generally. I do want to say that local government did contribute to some of the instability of PERS and STIRS by pension spiking. We're going to pay off people and get them to retire by giving them a huge salary bump that was not paid for over time. And so guess what? There became larger and larger amounts of unfunded liability. That mixed with an investment pool that was not sound during the economic recession of 2008 created a lovely volatile soup that we are still paying our way out of. And I'm sorry, public employees deserve a pension, that they worked in the name of the public to provide public services, to provide on public goods that elected officials, policymakers have established, and we need to fund that. That takes work. The challenge is, though, and what Ms. Tabbitt, I think, has been working for years, frankly, to elevate the issue on, to her credit, is when the state says, we're giving you $20 when 15 is spent.
Yep. Exactly.
And the $5 that is coming back to the district, our lovely labor groups are like, excellent, we would like 7, right? Because the needs are 7. So that is the challenging part, is that we get told we're getting new money, we don't actually get new money, and instead we get new costs. That's correct. So, Dr. Agakanian.
And by the way, out of that 7 that we say we get 5, they can keep the 7 if they want to, the state, So I was being
the
budgetary discretion is also at the governor. I know that at one point we had conversations about Ed 100 and how people should get more involved and learn about it. But I'm kind of hearing again discussions about budget, and people saying things like city pays you, and I think it's been a challenge, but I think maybe, Mr. President, we can remember at one point we were all encouraging everyone to do Ed 100. Maybe we can bring that back.
So I challenge you, Dr. Agakanian. You and I will now do Ed 100. Okie doke? We'll see who gets it done first. Let's see. Please continue with your presentation, but I did want to echo Ms. Tabbitt a bit in kind of illustrating there are additional costs that Sacramento creatively passes down that are really hard to itemize unless you lay it all out in a presentation like this when nobody is watching because they are tired of numbers. So this is why it's critical, folks, and this is why we have to tell this story wherever we go, and we may sound like a broken record to those of you who are recurring watchers.
I have a full tap dance Anytime I can get someone's attention.
You heard it first.
I
Ask
listen.
Charlene
I mean,
for her
I-
tap dance
yeah.
on retirement
It's,
and pension costs.
We've been
Okay.
doing some work.
Thank you.
If I may, I know we've spent some
go
time now on the pensions, but two final comments just on the pensions. One, back to Member Tabbitt's comments. Over the past 10 years, STRS has doubled in cost, and PERS has nearly gone by about 250%, 2.5x. And so it's a very significant increase for which, again, we have no control over, and it's not increasing the benefit to teachers. It's simply fulfilling the promises that have been made that they accepted as part of serving their community. I also want to acknowledge that, particularly on the STIR side, which again is our certificated teachers, they do not pay into Social Security, so they don't have that safety net for retirement. This is the government provided, compensation in retirement for a long career of service. So we also, again, President Ferguson, you made the comment a moment ago about various aspects of our funding, and I want to really highlight this page to help us understand. We are funded on attendance, not enrollment. We also are not funded on simply a single year of, for instance, this current year of attendance, but rather it's a 3-year average. And so you're seeing a pretty significant drop in our funded ADA over the next couple of years. I want to emphasize that's not commensurate with the enrollment that we anticipate, or the enrollment changes we anticipate over the same time period. This really is actually tied to the COVID years, where the legislature gave us a bump in the ADA calculation, pretty convoluted calculation, but I just want to emphasize we're not actually looking at a decline in enrollment of 1,000 students over the next 2 years. Rather, it's a factor of the way the state calculates our attendance.
That's helpful. During public comment tonight, there was a mention that we had lost 1,000 students in enrollment. This is how scary this world is at this moment because information flies so quickly. We have not lost 1,000 students. So the decline is real, but the people in this room have managed that. That's right. There is a decline in enrollment across the country, but again, there have been very creative solutions deployed here to try and keep that enrollment up. So, and to the credit of people in this room. So thank you for taking time for that, and to Stacey Cashman, who also is not here.
Absolutely. So you heard a little bit about this a few moments ago from Robin, but our supplemental funding, so again, the way that we are funded as a district is through a model called the Local Control Funding Formula, for which over 80% of our revenues come. And that gives us a base amount, every single school district in the state, with a few exceptions who have high enough local property taxes that they're not part of LCFF, but the vast majority of districts receive the same base grant amount. What differentiates districts is the number of students who are either English language learners, low income, as measured by free and reduced meal applications, homeless and foster youth. If they fit into those categories, then a district will receive additional funding. And so, again, when we talk about some of our neighboring districts, because of the demographics they serve, LA Unified, for instance, receives about $25,000 per ADA, per average daily attendance, whereas we receive about $15,000. So they are, again, more a 2/3 increase over us. Our neighbors nearby, Glendale, is more than 20% increased funding compared to us because of their demographics, and a few other factors for them. But their overall ADA funding, again, is over 20% increase from us.
And they are serving more needs. There are more challenges and more demands as a result to educate those populations. So this is not about a giveaway, but what it does allow you to do is flexibility within your budget to then use that for salaries, to use that for other things, to attract talent so that you're not spending that on outside agencies. So you're not spending that in different ways. So that is where that money makes sense, and or that's how it actually materializes. So, for members of the public, because we've heard before rhetoric that says, this is just giveaways. It's not. These are real needs that these school districts are handling, but it's not like we don't have any needs that don't need additional funding in order to handle it. So
Yes, very well said. So again, our overall percent of, or our population who meets one of those criteria is 36% of our student population meets one of the criteria just mentioned. And for those students, we receive additional funding, the services of which are funded that were just described earlier. Some of these slides are, again, for your review and for the public's review, but I'm not going to spend too much time in this presentation. But you can see our total revenues are dropping next year relative to what we are anticipating our actuals to be this year. The biggest reason for that change is because of the one-time funding that we received this year in the form of 2 block grants. Our initial allocation for those block grants was $20 million between the 2 sources. That number is being threatened to be reduced with the budget that will be adopted by the legislature and signed by the governor over the next couple of days. We are extremely grateful that the legislature has actually supported reinstating the majority of those funds. We have not yet heard, and that's the budget that they're passing, I believe they've passed today, but we've not yet heard that the governor is going to support that priority, and so we are very anxiously watching. Yes?
Thank you. The federal revenue drop, is that just ESSER funds, like one-time COVID funds?
Exactly.
And then what's left there in terms of the 6.4 to 5.9 million, that's, I assume, like title type funds?
Exactly.
Okay.
So
ESSER funds, title funds.
Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, just if we can be intentional about that. Can you define ESSER funds? Can you define title funds?
Peter, what's ESSER stand for? Do you know?
Every student succeeds. No, that's, see, no, that's the COVID relief dollars. See,
Elementary and secondary school emergency relief fund.
thank you. So those were allocated in blocks.
That's right.
For different needs, correct? And some went towards, this was all mid-Zoom meeting.
Yeah, I mean,
COVID.
so ESSER funds, everyone across the country received
There you go.
based on their ADA, based on, also some based on different populations served for things like PPE, personal protective
There we go.
equipment, excuse me.
Yep. No alphabet
So
soup.
many acronyms. You know, additional, yeah, it's COVID money, right? So it was COVID money. It was not just for like health and safety, but also for learning loss recovery, is my understanding, right? So, and then our title funds are the funds that are based off of essentially those unduplicated counts, right? So Title I being usually the lion's share of that funding, and it goes towards low-income students. I feel like I'm taking a test.
And we're bringing
You are acing the test. I'm very, very proud and impressed.
It helps us to get.
I think this is a helpful chart, though, again, especially for the public to be aware of where our funding comes from. The reality is that the feds provide very little funding to state education, and as Member Ponser-Kamkar just said, it's really the 2 main sources of funding they provide on an ongoing basis is for special education as well as for the various aspects, Title I, Title II, et cetera. So the vast majority of our funds come to us for LCFF. We are anticipating a 8.2% increase, for COLA increase for LCFF. However, if you actually go back to the chart here, the increase is just a little bit more than 4% in absolute dollars. The reason for that is because of that decline in ADA that we discussed a few moments ago. And so even though you will hear often spoken publicly about the COLA that the state is funding LCFF, those funds do not all come to the district because we have to net out the ADA decline. So a few things that we want to identify as far as budget assumptions. We have factored in inflation to non-personnel costs as well. So for our utilities and for health insurance and other things like that, we have include an inflation factor. We do have ongoing increases, step and column cost. We also have included the settlement, again, that we're asking you to approve here shortly for BTA's compensation increase. That's also in the budget.
Mr. Cantwell,
Yes.
and maybe it was in here and I missed it. Do you have an idea of a roundabout figure for step and column? Because that's ongoing every year.
It is in here, if you would give me one moment. For BTA, it's just under $900,000 for next year. For CSEA, it's about $440,000, and for our administrators, it's $133,000. And so, for those watching at home, step and column is the shorthand that we give for the increases that staff receive as part of a salary schedule. And so, if an employee is hired, they might start at a particular placement on that schedule, and then the following year they would get they'd move to the next step. And so this is a net number once you account also for personnel changes. And so that's why the number may be lower than some would anticipate, because it is, again, a net number holding constant FTE, the full-time equivalent, or the overall staffing load, the labor hours, but adjusting out for that net cost, if that makes sense. So expenses for next year, the thing just to point out is that you will see compensation for certificated and classified staff higher next year than the following years. That might be counterintuitive. The reason for that, though, is because of for BTA specifically, the retro increase that we will have paid out. Again, this will be updated at first interim once we make the changes as we close our books on this year. But for right now, all of the expense for both the 22-23 raise as well as the ongoing effect are all in the proposed budget for 23-24. And that's why you, again, see a significant increase there, and then it goes down the following year.
Further?
So the thing that I will just close with is this here is our multi-year projection. And what we are required to do by the state is not only prepare a budget for this coming year, but also to be looking with a 3-year outlook on ensuring fiscal solvency. And what this chart will show you is that even though we will be ending this year again, with a larger ending fund balance as we discussed previously. And this chart is showing both restricted and unrestricted funding sources. That's why this, it might even be larger than you were anticipating, because it is not only looking at the unrestricted, which is what we normally look at. But the key thing is going to be in the 25-26 year, you'll see in red the $6 million. What that is showing is that the only way that we can meet our financial obligations in the third year is by having $6 million of expenditure reductions. About 85% of our costs as a district is staffing, and so oftentimes that means reductions in staffing levels, but obviously that would be something that would be worked through in the coming years. But the only way that we're able to meet our ongoing obligations is through anticipated reductions, and so as a result, we will be having to create a fiscal stabilization plan that will be presented to the county, will present to the board for approval and sent to the county at first interim in October. And so the other thing is just that next line in red. Again, the red was intended to draw your attention, and that is to show that we are significantly deficit spending in each of these 3 years. And so we received a lot of one-time funds, which will be exhausting, we'll be drawing down, and that our financial ongoing obligations are exceeding the revenues. The only way that we're able to make things work over these 3 years is because of the fund balance that we currently have in place. Just last thing I'll point out is this has been the most difficult year to budget, both at the state level as well as at the local. The budget that the legislature and the governor have been negotiating over the past few weeks does not contemplate a recession. If we do have a recession in the coming months, then we are being told to prepare for a number of accounting tricks that the state will do that they have not done for over a decade. And so it is very likely that we will see changes in revenue mid-year or deferrals in payment of some of their commitments. And so this is going to be something for us to be keeping a very close eye on this year, what's taking place economically as well as politically in Sacramento.
So as we think about potential deferrals, et cetera, what would be great is to see just like kind of our projected days cash over the course of a year, because my understanding is we get paid at various points during the year. If those are deferred, at what point can we no longer pay payroll, is usually my concern. So that would be great to see kind of in the future, but not an emergency. Thank you.
Additional questions? Dr. Agakanyan.
So in terms of our investment accounts at Payton and Regal, how often do we get reports from them, how are we doing in our investment account? So we have an account that's managed by Payton and Regal, right?
Are you saying for the trust for our
Yes,
retiree benefits?
We've spent it.
We've nearly spent it down. So the balance has been drawn down intentionally over the past few years, and we will exhaust it this upcoming year. And so for the first time, we will actually we'll have a zero balance by the end of next fiscal year. And so that's a significant new cost that's going to be hitting the general fund beginning at the end of next fiscal year and having a larger effect in those out years.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I'm going to be fair now, and I'm going to say all of these dollar amounts that we are seeing, right, have an asterisk at this moment until we have a look at these books. So I want to thank everybody who worked hard to create these numbers, but this is also the lasting impact of what occurred now. So to members of the public, we are working to make sure that we believe these books are right. We have done what we believe is the due diligence necessary to get these books as right as possible. But until we have third-party validators to come in and to tell us, who are professionals, this is where the lack of trust will be. When we are communicating to members of our bargaining units, the third year out's going to be terrible. It's always been terrible. And they will return fire with, it's always sky is falling, right? And you've heard Diana Basta and others, and now Nicole Drebecki saying it, and telling us this. It's going to be really hard until we get done with this work to be able to say, no, sky is actually falling. So, again, I hate doing this. I need to put this in context for members of the public at home who are going to be following this, because we owe it to them to, again, get back to a place where we can be 100% sure. So thank you very much for your work on this, and we'll continue the work ahead, and thank you to our bargaining groups. Whatever comes our way, we will work together to get through it.
Thank you.
With that, we will go to, what's another? Oh my God, another public hearing? Yeah? Nope, 11D, report on excess reserves.
I've got a lot tonight. So, President Ferguson, this is just, again, a procedural step that because we are exceeding the reserve levels for this current fiscal year, we must bring this to you. And this is, again, identifying that our ending fund balance does exceed the 10% reserve cap. And as a result, we are going to be identifying the purposes of those excess funds, which, as we've already discussed, is for the compensation that's already been agreed to.
And are reserves getting in excess, the 1% that was triggered, that was different? Yeah. What? Right. Okay, great. With that, sorry, just quick questions. Any discussion on that item? Okay. We're not approving that, it's just a report. So on to item 11E, report on education protection account 2023-2024.
If you recall, Prop 30 was passed back in 2012, increased funding to public education. One of the requirements of it was that we identify and specifically call out the funding we receive and the purpose of how it's being used. For this upcoming year, we are anticipating $35,329,511 in revenue, all of which will be going toward funding for certificated teacher salaries and related benefits.
Questions on this item? Seeing none, we will go to item 11F. I'm just making sure, which is the public hearing of the district's initial proposal for the 2023-2024 amendment to the current collective bargaining agreement with the California School Employees Association, Chapter 674. We will open the public hearing. Would anybody like to address the board? Seeing none? Are you raising your hand? You'd like to speak, Mr. Schlossman? Okay, come forward.
Thank you for hearing me. You know, regarding all these financial matters, for years, when you spend money that doesn't need to be spent, I've been telling you that this day is coming.
Can you tie this to the bargaining agreement with the classified employees?
Sure.
Thank you.
Spend less than you have. Prepare for a rainy day. And just one other thing. As an example, you voted to allow your top people here, Ms. Casale, Ms. Neiman, to surrender their vacation days.
Again, I'm going to ask if you can tie this to the contract that is before the board right now.
Well, you'd have more money for the contract if you didn't do silly things like this. That's the connection.
Got it.
That's all.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you, Mr. Schlossman. Is there any other item, any other individual who would like to speak before the board in this? If not, we'll close that public hearing and move to item 12, new and or unfinished business. We have made it to 12A, adoption of Resolution 33 regarding the Education Protection Account, EPA 2023-2024. Going to ask all colleagues to hop in on motions on this just so we can get through after all the discussions that we've had.
Mr. President.
Ms. Tabbitt, thank you.
You're welcome. I move that the Board of Education adopt Resolution 33 regarding the Education Protection Account, EPA 2023 to 2024, for the portion of the state aid, local control funding formula, LCFF funds, identified as the EPA be spent on the current cost of certificated teacher salaries and benefits as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Tabbitt, seconded by Dr. Weisberg, to adopt Resolution 33 regarding the Education Protection Account. Any further discussion on this item?
No, sir.
Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. On to item 12B, adoption of Resolution 34 regarding the classification of fund balances in governmental funds.
Board President Ferguson.
Dr. Weisberg.
I move that we adopt Resolution 34 regarding the classification of fund balances in governmental funds as presented.
Second.
Moved by Dr. Weisberg, seconded by Dr. Agakanian. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none.
Wait, which one was this?
12B.
12B. You good?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds like folks are good. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. On to item 12C, approval of 2023-2025 negotiated successor to the agreement between the Burbank Unified School District and the Burbank Teachers Association in accordance with AB 1200 and the following statutes.
Board President Ferguson.
Dr. Weisberg.
I move that we approve the 2023 through 2025 negotiated successor to the agreement between the Burbank Unified School District and Burbank Teachers Association in accordance with AB 1200, AB 2756, and GC 3547.5 as presented.
Second.
Moved by Dr. Weisberg, seconded by Ms. Tabbitt, to move forward with the AB 1200 for the Burbank Teachers Association. So as a part of our discussions with the Burbank Teachers Association about our accounting error, we did go, as there will be additional
1%.
dollars that are able to be bargained. We asked, should we move forward with this AB 1200 and get people paid for what has already been negotiated, or should we hold off and wait till it's all negotiated together and then move forward? We received feedback and a request from the BTA board that we move forward with this AB 1200 and that we proceed to bargaining in good faith. We will do that, and I just want to disclose that. Thank you to our partners in BTA, and it is exciting to get people paid.
Yeah.
That is the truth, but more work to do. So thank you.
Thank you.
With that, any further discussion on this item? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. On to item 12D, which is approval of the district's initial proposal for the 2023-2024 amendment to the current collective bargaining agreement with the California School Employees Association, Chapter 674.
Board
President
President
Ferguson.
Milady.
Thank you, ma'am. I move that the Board of Education approve the district's 2023-2024 initial bargaining proposal with the California School Employees Association, Chapter 674, as presented.
Second.
Okay, moved by Ms. Tabbitt, seconded by Dr. Weisberg. I love the exchange of motions there. As much as I'm like,
Gotta keep
they don't need me.
moving
They
around.
don't need me. But I love that. So any further discussion on this item? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 5-0. On to item 12E, acceptance of the CSEA Burbank Chapter 674 initial proposal for bargaining a 2023, that's so similar to the first one, 2024 amendment to the current agreement with the Burbank Unified School District.
President Ferguson.
Dr. Weisberg.
I move that we approve, wait, is this 12D or 12E?
12E.
Yeah.
That's why-
Acceptance
this
of the
is what I-
California School Employees Association, CSEA, Burbank Chapter 674, initial proposal for bargaining a 2024 amendment to the current agreement with the Burbank Unified School District as presented.
Moved by Dr. Weisberg, seconded by Dr. Agakanian. This was officially Dr. Neiman's last test for each of us in this little, and we tried. That's what growth mindset. We'll be better tomorrow. Yes, I think we will. Anyway, discussion on this, question on this. Seeing none?
Can I
I'm
just
sorry.
make a comment that
Yes.
this is great? It's really tough sometimes for folks coming on in a new job. Maybe they're coming from a place where they haven't been working for a while, and to be able to provide this level of support. Oh, we're not there yet.
But so soon. You're just excited because it's cool.
It is cool. Sorry. I'll wait.
Everybody?
I'll say the comments again on the next one.
That's great. So, motion and second on the CSEA chapter, but stay tuned, folks, something entertaining.
It's gonna be good. Next one is good.
Okay, ready? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, what? Dr.
Seconded it.
Thank you, Ms. Quiterio, for saying,
Now
please
we're
stop
on
the madness
12F.
for 2 seconds.
Get pumped, everyone.
Okay,
It's coming.
all those in
It's
favor
coming.
say aye again.
Aye.
Opposed, that carries 5-0. Just wanted to make sure that was clear now that we had a second. Okay, Ms. Tabbitt, would you like to go off on 12F?
I will, because I think it's
Excellent.
really cool. Okay,
Fabulous.
I move that we approve the ratification of agreement between the Burbank Unified School District and the Department of Justice for professional fingerprinting services, effective May 19th, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, not to exceed $15,000 per year, and that authority to sign the agreement for professional services be exercised pursuant to BUSD. Am I reading the wrong one now?
No. Armand made
Thank you, Dr.
he made a joke.
Agakanian. Pursuant to BUSD AR 3314 as presented.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Tabbitt, seconded by Dr. Weisberg, and flat-tired by Armand.
Clarification is not per person.
No.
Yuck.
Not to exceed, it says, and
Talk
Finger-
about why you're so excited. This is cool.
fingerprinting can be as much
Everybody's
as $75 to $90 or more, depending, to be fingerprinted. So to make sure all the right folks are working in our school sites with our kids, we put them through extensive background checks. And so to be coming up with that money every time you go to a new job position, and it could be stressful on folks. So I think it's great that we're able to provide this service for new and incoming employees. It might speed up getting some folks in jobs, and we know, and not just us, but sorry, I didn't mean to go on and on, but it's not just Burbank Unified, but all districts are desperately seeking employees. It's a problem across the United States.
Yeah.
So,
Good.
okay, there
With
we
that,
go.
Awesome.
Do we have a second on that?
I seconded it.
Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now the exciting thing is reality, so congrats. On to item, and to everybody who worked on that. Item 12G, adoption of elementary science textbook, Delta Education, FOSS Next Generation, and this is coming out of the lottery textbook fund.
Mr. President,
Dr. Agakanian.
I move that the Board of Education adopt the Delta Education FOSS textbook and materials not to exceed $1,197,383.51 as presented.
Second.
Okay, moved by Dr. Agakanian, seconded by Ms. Tabbitt, to adopt item 12G. For those of you who always ask, where's the lottery money going? Right here.
Books.
Right
I
here.
was just
Books.
gonna say that.
Textbook. Really good at one time, not good at ongoing costs. So just reminder for folks at home, you buy your lottery tickets, thank you very much. That does go to public education. It gets us books and supplies. But these are, again, one-time expenses. We can't pay teachers with it. It's unpredictable how much money we're going to get year to year, just like the Powerball.
And unfortunately, we can go years without a textbook adoption, and so it's rough.
Yeah.
Well, it takes a long time too to vet and adopt textbooks.
Yes, but.
Okay. Okay. Hello,
Sorry.
everybody. Yeah, we're going to raise hands. We're going to do that thing. Thank you. Appreciate it. Just because I want to get us all home, and I appreciate you. Okay. With that, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 5-0. On to item 12H, acceptance of gifts. Ms. Tabbitt.
Mr. Ferguson, I move that the Board of Education take formal action accepting the following gifts to the district and remind our many, many donors how appreciative you are by your exuberant acceptance of these gifts.
Dies for lack of a second.
Oh, second.
Thank you. Moved by Ms. Tabbitt, seconded
I didn't
by
even say an
Ms. Ponser.
exuberant second, but we got it, didn't we?
Look at that. Inspiring change already. Excellent. So Dr. Agakanian has his coffee, so this is a good thing. Thank you. That's the first acceptance of gifts. Any other discussion on the actual gift report? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries 5-0. So with that, as I clear my throat, I want to just take formal action and exuberantly or not, but sincerely thank all the donors, all the following donors for their donations to our schools and to our school district. To the Burbank Arts and Education Foundation, who has donated $2,500 to be used for string instruments at John Muir Middle School. We thank you for that, especially as a former viola player at John Muir Middle School. I remember, Mr. New for life. To John Muir PTSA, which has donated $12,600 to be used for school equipment and improvements at John Muir Middle School. To the Thomas Jefferson PTA, who has donated $1,400 to be used for materials and supplies for the clay class at Thomas Jefferson Elementary School. To the Burbank High Baseball Boosters, who wishes to donate, or who has donated $5,525 to be used for coaching stipends at Burbank High School. Is this, I just want to make sure we were potentially reviewing, and if we need to make a change to the motion, I would rather do it now.
We probably do, just based on the language that we just agreed upon today.
Okay. So with that, I will move that we reconsider the gift report. Is there a second?
Second.
So basically, we voted on it. We need to undo the approval motion so that we can review based off of new language that is being used on coaching stipends. So I will move that we reconsider this item. Is there a second? Sorry.
It does not. Everybody.
Thank you. To Ms. Ponser-Campcart, thank you. We'll call that a second real quick. Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. So we are back to the gift report on this. I'm going to ask that we remove approval for item, or we remove item D, and we approve the gift report letters A through C and E and F. Okay?
Stands for what was amended.
So, can you turn on your mic, Ms. Guterrio? Thank you.
So the incorrect report was uploaded into Granicus for June 1st. Therefore, the amendment is the entire report for June 15th.
Got it.
Thank you so much.
So now we're amending the amended report.
Correct. Excellent. Okay. Any further discussion on this? We'll have it back at the next meeting if it's appropriate, but if it's not in compliance, then we need to get it into compliance with our new policy, which is going to be rolling out, it looks like, in the beginning of the school year. So we should probably have a board report on that. Okay. I'm
Just
sorry,
asking.
I didn't mean to take
No,
this
no,
longer.
that's okay.
Okay.
Could we have a board report because not all of us are? Yeah.
Yeah, that's important. Absolutely. Exactly. Great. See, this is.
You'll find out.
Okay.
Just wait.
So there is a policy change that has been suggested to sports coaches and stipends. So we'll ask that that come back soon, as it's anticipated to go into effect this school year. Or at least that's what we were told. I've been told in the past 24 to 4, correct. Yes, so Dr. Paramo, if we could send out information in advance on that, not so that the board can confer on that, but again, just so that there's awareness, and then get it to a report. Next 2 meetings would be ideal. That works for folks?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Okay. With that, I'm just going to finish up and thank the Joaquin Miller PTA, which has donated $3,541.70 to be used for field trip buses and consultants at Joaquin Miller Elementary School, and to the Jefferson PTA, who has donated $1,650 to be used for photography classes for 2nd and 4th graders at Thomas Jefferson Elementary School. Again, a lot of different gifts, doing a lot of different work to enrich the educational experiences of our young people. And with that, and just thank you to everybody. With that, we'll go to the consent calendar.
Before that, Mr. President, not to sound like a broken record, but again, I would love to, at one point, acknowledge our donors, maybe work with the foundation, maybe do a luncheon, something to not only acknowledge them, but thank them. I've said this over and over again, but I'm thinking we can talk about that.
Just so I was speaking to Dr. Parmo generally about what were priorities that I had heard previously identified by board members as he took on the responsibilities, and then he is meeting individually with each of us to talk about priorities that we want to see move forward. So that was it's not lost on anybody, but I do want to say, this is the transition period, and everybody will have their own time to identify their own priorities, but it hasn't been lost. Yep. You're getting it donated. We're not buying it. Okay. So we are now moving to the consent agenda. Up before the board are items 13A through 13AK as presented. Can I get a motion for those items?
President Ferguson,
Dr. Weisberg.
I move that we approve 13A through 13AK as presented.
Okay, moved by Ms. Dr. Weisberg, seconded by Dr. Agakanian. Any further discussion on this? Any items board members wish to pull?
No.
Seeing none, we'll move to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. With that, that brings us, excuse me, to the final period of public communications. This is 3 minutes on any item. And so we have Schlossman and Milady, possibly Jerry Milady. I don't know what your card says.
What's that?
I don't know what your card. There you go. Okay, so Schlossman first, and then Mr. Jerry Milady. Good evening.
Hey, good evening. When the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, I don't remember where I saw this, or read it, but the Japanese said, maybe we've awoken a sleeping giant. And I fear that that's what you've done with your double talk. And you're ignoring my question. I asked you a simple question, and when you ignore me, all of you didn't answer my question. My phone went off, and they went, wow, you asked a very clear question, and they just ignore you. Ms. Tabbitt, you give some double talk too. You say to this this room full of people, we're not doing anything. And then over here, you spent $15,000 to look at something. So that's the confusion. And that's the message that all of you send. We're just thinking about it. You don't need to be concerned. And I get it that they're concerned. Okay, real quickly, I'm against taxes, raising taxes, not taxes. I don't mind paying my taxes. I just don't want to pay redundantly over and over. So here's a way for you, Mr. Ferguson, to accomplish what you want. And here's a way to accomplish what I want. Have a registry with the city for property owners who want to help teachers, policemen, firemen, civil servants It was civil service that put bread on my table growing up. My father was a civil servant. And let us register our units on your website for your employees to see. It's voluntary. It's no cost to you other than a little bit of a website. And many people think like me. We want to help, and I'm willing to accept less rent because I know I'm getting a good tenant with a job. I'm willing to take less than market rates. And you don't have to go to the taxpayers with a bond or a parcel tax. And that's all the posturing you're doing tonight. I read between the lines with you. You are absolutely posturing for another bond. You told us so at your goals meeting. I'll be the first to enroll when you do this if I have a vacancy. You've been to my property. You know I'm capable and I want to do it. Why don't you look into maybe arranging a tax break for property owners who rent to civil servants? Yeah. And there are other ways to pay for child care, and I'm here to help you get it done. But you'll have to reach out, which
Thank you.
you never do.
Mr. Mulady, welcome.
Yes, I want to end on a positive note. I want to congratulate Sarah about her new experiences. And I want to say when COVID hit, I was one of the first, probably if not the first one in this district to get it. And she reached out to me many, many times during the first month or so to help me through it and get through it. So I really appreciated that when it happened. So I just want to say good luck and thank you very much for that time.
That's real. Okay, staff response. You can chill.
Thank you, Mr. Mulady.
Go ahead, Dr. Alpine.
Sorry, Dr. Neiman, thank you for your
Thank you,
services and thank you for all you've done. And I'm looking forward to you coming back one day and sharing some of your success stories with us. But thank you for all your services and for being a friend.
Yeah. Ms. Tabbitt.
Mr. Schlossman, I'm trying to choose my words carefully because I'm not always the best communicator. Sometimes I overspeak, but I want to clarify my reasoning behind voting yes to spend $15,000 on a feasibility report. There were I probably think that I might be alone. I don't know. I can't speak for my other board members because in order for us to talk about something, it has to be agendized. And then we have to have a time and a place to talk about it. So I personally, myself, don't see a feasible way for us to develop housing for our teachers. Whether it would be a positive thing or a negative thing, I just don't think that the district is in the right position to do that. However, by voting for a feasibility report, I get some kind of, I don't know the right word, proof, backup that my thoughts are correct. And I'd rather be corrected, or either way, by a professional than going through with what I just assume. So does that make enough sense? So it wasn't going against or for. As I said tonight, I probably would not vote to build housing at Horseman. It just doesn't seem like the right thing to do. However, the feasibility report will tell me by professionals whether or not I'm right or wrong. And that's my reasoning for voting yes on the $15,000 feasibility report. And Sarah, really congratulations. Very well deserved. I'm very excited for you. And thank you for your years of service to us here in BUSD.
Okay, Dr. Weisberg.
Thank you. For people who are still watching and will watch again tomorrow, so there's like 2 people watching now and maybe tomorrow.
Thank you, YouTube.
I want to quote something that was said earlier tonight. Don't spin the information to your benefit. And I want to encourage people who are looking for authentic ways to support the district to seek out people who don't look for negativity, who don't make it their full-time job to pass off something they don't understand as an insidious, mysterious thing. And encourage people to reach out to us. If you have questions, we're here to answer them. We're all up here transparently. Nobody on the dais here is making a lot of money. We're doing it because we love public education and we want people to feel as strongly about it and our teachers and our students as we do. So please don't allow fear-mongering and misinformation to guide you in your decision-making. Please reach out to us because we want to have those real tough conversations. We don't shy away from them, and we operate from a place of honesty and goodwill.
Thank you. To Mr. Milady, thank you. You took me back to that moment when we all heard, because that's when it became very real to me. When you had COVID, that's when it became a real family moment for me. Again, I'm so glad that you are here. You're happy. You're joking with us. You're figuring out whether or not to put public hearing cards in or whatever. But thank you for taking me back to that very human moment because you've always just brought such joy to my life, and it was really phenomenal to hear how Sarah did that for you or Dr. Neiman did that for you. Anyway, always here for you, and just thanks for taking me back to that moment because those were really, truly scary times for all of us in different ways. And we kind of forget that. Mr. Schlossman, I appreciate ideas. I've always said that to you. I appreciate ideas when I hear them. What you're talking about in terms of subsidized housing or tax rates, it sounds very similar to, kind of what Section 8 does. And right now, and again, different income levels, there's different qualification factors there, but we are struggling within the region to find people to offer housing with Section 8 vouchers. So it is very challenging I'm not saying impossible, but I really do appreciate the ideas on the board, and I will look into where tax rebates in particular can be offered on that end, and how the district may not be able to directly offer that without a ballot initiative, but frankly, I don't think that there's a ton of money we can be giving away anyway right now, just to be real, because I don't think we can actually give away anything because we don't directly collect any taxes. So anyway, but thank you for that. We could work with city partners, things like that. So again, I'll look into it. So thank you for contributing ideas. I do listen to you. I don't always have time to come over and have breakfast. I don't. But I appreciate that the tone today wasn't about kids. I appreciate that the tone today was not about transgender youth at a time when I'm just saying I appreciate that it wasn't there today. And we have a community next door that's really struggling. And I want to be supportive of those communities. And again, he gets indignant when I acknowledge a good thing. So with that, everybody, have a wonderful rest of your evening, and thank you for joining us.